Okay, we're live, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you, members. Welcome to this meeting of the County Council, 23rd of September 2021. We will make a start with apologies for absence. Nicola, can you let us have the apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from County Councillor Debbie Blakeborough and County Councillor Alan Davis. Councillor Laura Jones will be attending a bit later.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Chair, there's no hand function, but apologies from Councillor Dave Evans as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Petroni.
Chairman, may I pass apologies on from Councillor Jones and Councillor Francis Taylor, and hopefully Councillor Smith will be joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Smith has arrived, Councillor Harris.
Thank you.
Welcome, Councillor Smith. Thank you. Brilliant. So, Nick, you note those, please, for us. We haven't had any public questions at number 3, and there are no announcements from me, and we haven't had any petitions. So that allows us to go straight into item number 5, which is reports for Council. 5.1, Social Care Safeguarding and Health Annual Director's Performance Report 2020-2021. And I believe Julie Boythroyd is going to join us now. Julie.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you. I'm just going to try and share my screen now so that I can run through the report. Lovely, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to take you through my final annual report today. It's my final day in work as well, so hopefully I'm going to be able to get through this. It's been a very momentous couple of weeks. So I'm going to start by just explaining a little bit about the way that I have delivered this report over the last 3 years. Using a sway, it allows us the opportunity to be able to put as much information into the report as possible, and particularly information from people who use our services and actually can contribute to this report. So I'm hoping that it'll be a rich experience for people. Just going to move down. So I'm going to scroll down and pick up bits as I go along. I'm not intending to play the videos and some of the content that is in there, because when I did this last year, it ended up suspending the report and I had to do it from memory. And I'm not sure I can do that this year, given the week I've just had. So I started with my foreword, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. I just wanted to make reference really to a film that I've included, which is, I think it's worthy of note because it's a tribute that was paid to the social care workforce from the Association of Directors of Social Services at their annual conference, or a workshop it was this year. And what's really lovely about this film is obviously it pays tribute to the wonderful work that our staff do across Wales, and particularly obviously for us in Monmouthshire. But actually the poem that is used in this film is actually written by one of our frontline home carers. Her name is in there. She's called Rowena Gain. And I think we're very proud of the fact that this was used as the tribute for the whole of Wales. So I think when you get chance, if you have had chance, or if you do get chance to look at that, it is a fitting tribute. Just moving on, this year I've taken a slightly different approach from the last 2 reports, in that I wanted to leave a bit of a position statement really about where we are, where we're going, and particularly about the direction of travel, which members and council will have heard me talk about over the years that I've been here. But in effect, what we have is a very, very strong vision about how we want to support people here in Monmouthshire. And I think I've got a sentence in there that just captures that, which is we're trying to help people to live their own lives, making sure that everything we do starts with the person. And I think that's a very, very strong value that is held throughout our workforce. In terms of the direction of travel, there are a couple of PowerPoint slide decks here that just really chart in headline terms some of the foundation stones, if you like, of what we're trying to achieve. So from an adult's perspective, which is the slide on the left, the place-based working, we're trying to make sure that we align our support for people into the places where they live, and that wherever possible, that is an integrated approach. And children's services on the right, you'll be aware that we have been, and Jane Rogers, particularly as the head of children's services, has been carrying out a transformation piece of work over the last 3 to 4 years. And later on in the report, when I talk about some of the performance information, you'll be able to see what has been achieved there. But again, everything is child-centred and adult-focused. It's all about starting with people. I do talk a little bit about how the last decade, I suppose, has had, I suppose it's played its part in creating a situation that we are in now. Members will be aware that, and you know, it's in the news all the time, and we've talked about it quite a lot here, is, you know, even though it sounds very extreme, the crisis in care that we are currently experiencing, it is a crisis currently. And I have mentioned in my report here that actually, you know, we have been taking steps over the last 10 years to try and change the way that we deliver our support so that we can be as robust as possible. But even with that approach, we are struggling at the moment to actually meet some of the needs of the people in Monmouthshire. And I think it's particularly difficult for our workforce, who are finding that very, very challenging, because they know what it is that they can provide under normal circumstances, and that's being compromised at the moment because of some of the gaps and deficits that are there. That said, and I say this quite a lot, there is a very, very strong can-do attitude in Monmouthshire, and if anybody can make things better, our workforce will be trying their hardest to do that, and I know that they are every day. Section here called Growing Practice, it's all about practice. I think it's fair to say that this has been my mantra for the last 15, 20 years. If we don't get practice right, and by that I mean, you know, the individual worker, be that a home care worker, be that a social worker, be that a first line manager, knocking on somebody's door and making sure that we are really listening to what people say and really acting on that. If we don't get that practice right, we might as well go home. Now, I know we get that practice right, and I wanted a section in this report to actually reflect that practice piece, if you like. I make no excuses for showing these wonderful pictures of some of the people that we support who have very, very rich and full lives as a result of the way that we are practicing. The ethos that we have is very much that relational, strengths-based, compassionate care that concentrates on what matters, and that runs through every bit of me and every bit of the work, every bit of our workforce as well. I also just wanted to reference, and again, this is a film that you can watch at your leisure. Even though we've been living through and still are living through extreme times, there has still been innovation in our practice and in our work. And the Community Night Support Service, which you can see the picture, which is at the front of the report, and there's a film here, has started in the middle of the pandemic. And this was very much an initiative that staff brought to the attention of management and said, we think we could make a difference if we operated through the night. Now, I don't know about you, but the idea of working through the night and going and knocking on people's houses at 3 o'clock in the morning is quite a tough ask, I think. But under the leadership of Lucy, who you can see in the picture there, and Lisa Powell, who is one of the managers, they have created this excellent service that at this moment in time is responding to people across Monmouthshire. It's being rolled out across Monmouthshire, having started in Abagbeni, really to make sure that we can reduce those unnecessary hospital admissions, which we want to do, but also help people remain in their own homes feeling comfortable and confident. It has been a very, very successful project so far. Also, it's up for an award at the moment, and we don't chase awards, and I think it was Paul, Chief Exec, who suggested that this was put forward. And so I think it's this week that Lucy will be in London giving a presentation about this project. In 2 categories it's been accepted, so fingers crossed it might be something that has more of a national focus into the future. I've also, throughout this report, put quite a bit of quotes in from a recent February 2021, our Care Inspectorate Wales assurance check. I have to say, when CIW said that they wanted to come in February 21, originally I think they wanted to come earlier, and I said you can't, because we're just under the, we can't cope, we're under the cosh. They came, our heads of service and our teams really, you know, showcased exactly what it is that we're about. And I've made no excuse for putting in these comments this time and these quotes, because they really underline the progress that's been made and the efforts that our workforce go to supporting people. And I was particularly pleased with this, because often we're not particularly pleased when those things happen, but there's a really good example this time around. I also, just to reference on the right hand side, some of the other innovations that have happened whilst COVID has been with us, actually having to adapt our support so that we can actually continue to meet people even though the restrictions were there. So, for example, the walk and talk support that I know has been provided through the Autistic Spectrum Disorder Service, again, is a really good example of how we've been able to meet people's needs even though we've not been able to do the things that we would normally do. And finally, I think in this section, again, I think in the last two reports, I've also talked about the work that we do with the prison population. We have a responsibility under the Act to provide similar support to people in prison. And there's a lovely little podcast, if you like, of a couple of members of staff who linked in with the prison while we were in lockdown and actually carried out a wellbeing challenge, which was walking from Land's End to John O'Groats, or the other way around, I can't remember which. And I just think it exemplifies those lengths that's gone to make sure that we can do the right things by people, even when they're in a prison establishment. Partnership and collaboration is a fundamental foundation stone of what we do. And again, the quote that CIW put into our annual, our check report, I think really underlines the effort that we have gone to and how we have developed partnerships with others. So the internal partnerships team and the community development angle, aligned with social services, have delivered amazing efforts during this time. The work of the corporate parenting panel, again, one of those partnerships, is really striving to make sure that the voice of care leavers is present and actually drives forward the work that we're doing. And I'm very pleased about that. Carers continue to be involved in implementing and coordinating the strategy and the design of services. And our very own Penny Jones, as the lead for that, has really helped spurn that forward. And I know that the team are very pleased that Penny's involved. My mates, I always mention my mates, and some colleagues who would have been with me earlier when we were having a bit of a tribute to me. I think I lost myself when people with a learning disability were on the film saying what a difference had been made. So very pleased about that. Our workforce, they're just brilliant. End of. There's not much else to say. I'm not going to go into all the details that's involved in this, but I think it's fair to say that the efforts that we're having to go to actually ensure that we recruit the right people and that we keep the right people is proving difficult, but we're finding ways in which we can do that every day. Okay, I'm going to go into the summary and opportunities ahead. There are a number of key things that I'm sort of leaving, if you like, for others to pick up, and they'll pick it up well. But some of the opportunities that exist for us are building that early help and prevention, and that community focused approach will be something that will help us into the future and will help us with this current crisis that we have in care. I think paying attention to that whole sector workforce, it isn't just the workforce that we have here in Monmouthshire, it's actually that whole wide workforce. Place-based approach. And I suppose one of the things that I'm very excited about is the Crick Road, the replacement of Sevenview, that is going to actually start being built this year. And I really look forward to an invite to the opening when that happens in 2023. Just in terms of the key challenges and risks, you know, it's a tricky time. It's fair to say it's a tricky time at the moment. I've said to a number of people it's the best and worst time to be leaving. I don't think there's ever a good time, but it does feel, you know, pretty tricky because, you know, even though I said I was leaving a few months ago, it's exponentially got a lot worse in that time, which is quite remarkable, really. But I think we have a strong workforce who are able to take forward these key challenges and risks really, really ably, and they will be trying their hardest to make sure that we mitigate wherever possible the risks that I've identified. Okay, the performance section in here is rather large, and I've added it at the end, not because it's not important, because clearly it's very important, but actually the framework under which we are measured has changed and is changing and is partway through being implemented. So what you have in front of you today is the first stage of suite of new measures. So in effect, what's gone before isn't measured again, so we've got a whole new suite of measures. And all of that detail is there, and I'm hoping that people have had a chance to look at that. But just to say that the if you like, the areas on which we are measured have changed as well. So they're different for children and adults, although there are some similarities. So we're measured around our front door, and that's very much in line with the Act around how do we ensure that people are supported in their communities and actually only need our support when actually all of the supports have run out, if you like. So that first contact with us is very, very important. We're often trying to signpost people, support people to do as much as they can for themselves before, if you like, they need to get to some formal support. There's lots of data there, and I think one of the things I would reflect on is that throughout all of this data, our satisfaction rate remains really high, and I think that is a really important thing to hold while we're going through these difficult times. So again, I'm in the adult section of the performance report here. So assessments and care and support plans, again, we're measured around that, how many we've done, in what sectors, you know, the percentage of things that have been completed within timeframes where they exist. And I think this is going to build over the next few years. Like I said, this is year one of a new framework. So very much, I'm very indebted to Richard Jones and Sean Schofield, who put a lot of this information together. It was a big task this year because we've moved from an old system to a new system. So I'm very grateful for their support in pulling this together. Preventative services, again, really important part of our service offer. If we're going to get that right, we're going to stand a chance, as I said earlier. I just wanted to put these graphs in just because I think it's important to understand about our capability to continue providing in certain areas of our business at this moment in time. Reablement, which is where we're helping people to regain, you know, their health following any illness or surgery, etc., is a really, really strong part of what we do. And we've had very high success rate in this area. 60–70% of people who go through our reablement services remain reabled and well for up to 2 years, and that's a great statistic in terms of, and that statistic has been running for many, many, many years. I think what's frustrating at the moment, and this is why some of our workforce are feeling very overwhelmed, is they're not able to achieve that at the moment because we just don't have enough of the right types of people, or people are stuck in the hospital system, and by the time that we can get them out, that reablement window is gone. But I just wanted to show that, and obviously as time goes on, we'll be monitoring that. Provision of services, you know, again, that's just how long are we helping people to remain living at home, how many people are living in different types of service arenas, and then adult safeguarding. And, you know, I think it's of note that safeguarding inquiries, people will see the 51.5%. We've done lots of inquiries into this. I think it's fair to say that it's an interesting figure because part of this is about waiting for others to give information on which we can conclude. So even though it looks like a low figure, it's being well monitored, and we know that people are safeguarded at the point of referral, and that isn't a reflection on that. It is just the way that the statistic falls into our suite of performance data. And in children's services, again, we have front door, which I mentioned before. And again, I think it's fair to say in adults and in children's volume has been massive. We've seen unprecedented numbers of people coming towards us, very much in that restriction lifting phase of the pandemic that we're in, and it's been very, very difficult for all sorts of reasons, and we are monitoring those numbers closely. So again, assessments were measured around, particularly in children's services, you know, the amount of assessments that are carried out in which section of the Act that we're operating, care and support plans and reviews, and safeguarding again. It's interesting and of note that our children looked after numbers are beginning to come down. I'd say that tentatively because tomorrow they could go up again. It's one of those very variable things in children's services. But I'm, you know, leaving very confident that the suite of support and the way that practice is aligned in children's services is meaning that we are getting much more traction and every opportunity to make sure that children do remain with their families and don't end up being in our care is very much at the forefront of all their activity. Children looked after and leaving care, again, you've got all the details there in terms of the numbers. I'm not going to go through all of them because I will be here all afternoon if I do that. Leadership, governance and accountability, a very important part of what we do. You know, I've said this before, but social services is a core responsibility in local government, and in lots of ways it's come to the fore in the last couple of years with the issues that we've had to deal with in the pandemic. The money, I always have this little bubble diagram and the numbers go up every year, and I think it's fair to say that, you know, there has been sizable investment into both adult services and children's services to support that rise in demand and to enable our workforce to continue to deliver to the people of Monmouthshire. So I believe, I believe I've got to the end. So I'm more than happy to take questions and yeah.
Julie, thank you very much. Back feed.
Trying to unshare the screen, sorry.
Okay, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation of your. Go to members now. Questions. Penny, Councillor Penny Jones.
Oh, there it is. I've done it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. It's all going off on the screen in front of me. Hi, Julie. This is just a thank you for the presentation of your annual report, which is sadly, very sadly, your last one to full council. It was an excellent and inspirational report, as always, highlighting that all you and the adult and children's services teams accomplished to the benefit of so many under real constraints, not least, of course, the pandemic recently. The format made it so readable and understandable, and that's so helpful. People are able to identify things as they stand, both good and bad. We do face immense difficulties, which cannot be underestimated, but you've left a legacy of resilience and hope, which can be carried forward. So thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armand Watts. Councillor Watts.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, there's a delay there. Yeah, thank you, Julie. Look, I wish you well going forward with your whatever you're doing next. I spoke to the former head of South Gloucestershire a couple of months ago, and I asked him what he was doing now, and he was sailing around the world. So I assume that's what you all do, really. So good luck with that. I have some questions, really, Julie, about, I guess, future-proofing Monmouthshire. And obviously, as you know, the demographic in Monmouthshire, I think our average working age is something like 48. Now, I'm obviously full of self-interest here because I anticipate by the time I retire that we'll have wraparound care, I'll have support for the people who are supporting me as well as myself. But that doesn't look to be the case with the existing provision that we have. So you mentioned earlier Crick Road, which is a potentially a fantastic facility, and as you know, I got personal experience of previous provision both in Chepstow Hospital and in Chepstow Town itself. Both excellent, different dates on those buildings, but I appreciate that things need to move on. I guess what I'm worried about is in more recent years we've seen a decline in care in Chepstow, the hospital, because it's moved to St Willis, and that was obviously very controversial, and I don't think any member really wanted that at all. But it goes back to what we can do, not just the health board, but collaboratively with the health board to make them realise that Monmouthshire in particular has a disproportionately high amount of elderly people. So from 48, if I forward wind 17 years, we won't even be solvent enough with the amount of revenue that we're getting from council tax to support my generation, let alone the people the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I wonder what your thoughts were on that, bearing in mind it is your last day, Julie, so you're free to say whatever you want, right?
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Yeah, I am free to say whatever I like. I'm not going to, obviously. I'm going to, but I think there's quite a bit to unpack there. But I think fundamentally that issue about our demographic, it's interesting. We've been talking about the demographic of Monmouthshire for many years now, and particularly as you mentioned, the sort of over 80s and the over 85s is a massive, really big number for us. And it does feel at the moment that that's almost like on our heads at the moment, and then compounded with what's happened as a result of the pandemic. I think the bit that gives me confidence is that we have an approach and have had an approach, particularly around the adult world and older people's world, which is about future proofing. And it's about saying, how can we make sure that communities can be as resilient and as strong as they can be? How do we, I'm thinking of some of the work that we've done around what we call changing practice, changing lives. Some of the community endeavours that are springing up in our communities that are particularly focused on trying to keep older people well, connected to their communities, resilient, so that actually it's about keeping people, I'm not saying keeping away from social services, but not needing necessarily that intensive support for longer and longer. And, I point to themes like social isolation and loneliness. If we can really impact and make sure that people are connected and can contribute, that's been a huge finding for us, that people want to contribute. They don't just want to be recipients of service. So, that suite of early intervention and prevention work, I think, is very strong and very driven. And as I've mentioned in the report, the approach around place-based, that's trying to make that, if you like, our formal offer link with that community offer to make sure that there's much more strength in those communities. And I think we have a good vision, a good philosophy, and we're doing some of that now, and we can build on it. Moving into sort of more formal service land, there's been some questions about why only 32 beds for a replacement care home. That is our only, that's our replacement, that's the number of beds that we have. We did explore looking at trying to make that bigger. But what we want to do is make sure that support for people with dementia is world class in Monmouthshire. Now, that not everybody can have that because only 32 beds, but if we can model what really, really good care looks like into the future, then I'll be very happy. Because if people take a leaf out of our book and say, I tell you what, that's what good care should look like, then I'll be very happy as I reach, into my older age. The bit about Tripster Community Hospital, has been a hot topic, and we've been very, very clear as a service that we want to see as much maximised into that space as we possibly can, so that it is there to support people. I think it's fair to say that things have been a bit sidetracked with the pandemic. There was a real push just before we went into the pandemic to really look at how we're going to use it, what can it be used for. I mean, one initiative that it is and has been used for recently is a community bed, if you like, but in the hospital, whereby we now have some consultant time into Monmouthshire supporting that transition for people, so they don't have to go into an acute hospital. At the moment, it's one bed, but if this trial proves to be successful, then I think that that's something that we potentially would be able to see more of in that Chepstow Community Hospital provision. But there's no two ways about it. It's tricky times, but I think that we've laid down a good foundation for what needs to happen into the future.
Julie, thank you. No, that's it. Can I say thank you? Can I also say, whilst I haven't always agreed with Julie on everything, I'd like to wish you all the very best going forward.
Thank you, Armand.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thank you, Councillor Watts. Councillor Roger Harris, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was lucky enough this morning to bump into Julie down in County Hall, and I was so pleased that I did. Julie, you've been an inspiration to us all for years, and I expressed my gratitude and appreciation to you this morning, but I want to do it publicly now, which is what I'm hoping I've just done. Your positive attitude and cheerfulness have pervaded the staff of the county and us county councillors for years, and I'm not sure we can ever replicate that. I hope we can, but I think it's going to be a hard task. The other thing to say now is, whatever you're going to do in the near future, absolutely enjoy it. Have a wonderful time. Make sure you've got a permanent suntan, and come back and see us sometime or other. So all the best, and thanks again for what you've done.
Thank you very much, Roger. I don't tan very well, but I will try my hardest.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Julie. Councillor Petruni, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just echoing my Labour colleagues, Julie, it's been a pleasure to work with you and scrutinise all your reports for the last 3 years. You'd be, I don't know if happy is the right word. I'm not going to let you down this time either. Shock horror. But firstly, thank you for all your hard work, all your team's hard work. I suspect this has been the most difficult time for social services during this pandemic, that certainly in my lifetime, and you and your team have done an outstanding job, and I know from the entire Labour group we support everything you guys do and continue to do during this pandemic. On the report itself, just a few technical questions. On the preventative services, the report talks about basically how many people in care and support plans have been given direct payments to use as they will to, and I'm using your words, giving them more choice and control over their own care and support. But there's kind of no explanation of what choice they've exercised, what kind of support. Was it successful then in the end? Are we still reviewing it? Are they reviewed? Like, it's just left there, as in, isn't it nice to get money to choose their own care? But I don't get any sense of, has it been successful? Does it work? Further below that, on provision of services, safeguarding of adults. I appreciate it's COVID, but safeguard inquiries answered in 7 days is down to 51%. Is that down to COVID and staff being off and the practical realities of trying to turn around those inquiries within 7 days? Can it be put down to that? And give me a sense of reassurance that hopefully COVID over time will ease, the misery of it will ease. Or is it a long-term problem that us councillors and the next council should be concerned about? Oh, actually, third, this is a little geeky me. The surveys, and there's several surveys saying 79% of adults, percentage of children. How does those surveys work? Are they self-selecting, i.e., you know, people volunteer or you select them? I suppose the core issue I want to cover is, are we ensuring that the people who maybe have a problem with service get access to the survey, are highlighted the survey, are supported to fill out the survey if they struggle to fill out surveys or whatever? Do you know what I mean? That's what I sort of mean. That's what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Yeah, direct payments. Let me start there. Interestingly, when I go back along my long career, I was once responsible for the direct payment service. I've got a very strong affinity with it. It's a brilliant thing, but technically difficult. So we have approximately, I don't know if the number's in there, but off the top of my head, towards 200 people who are recipients of direct payments in some shape or form across the council. When you mentioned about choice, often people want to be in a position where they can be in control of their own support. So, you know, there are options around the way in which your support is delivered. And when we're having conversations with people, it's a live decision, if you like, and a live choice that people can make. A high proportion of people want to just take the support that we commission, and then this smaller number of people choose to self-direct, for want of a better word. The team that runs this is small and always has been, but deeply passionate about making a difference. And I've certainly been very fortunate over the years to sit with cohorts of the people who receive direct payments in Monmouthshire and hear their experiences. And even though it's complicated and technically difficult, we do support people with that. But in effect, they are employers. So taking on the responsibility, not only if you're somebody who's living with, you know, a disability or have some issues in your life, actually being the employer of people who then support you and managing that is a big ask. And that's partly why the numbers have not, you know, catapulted up over the years. I mean, we're talking 20 odd years this has been in place, perhaps even a bit longer. And the numbers just haven't catapulted forward. We have tried many, many times to make that be so, because we're passionate about that being the right approach. So I would want to reassure you, Councillor Dimitri, that actually we have a really good hold on this, and I'm sorry it doesn't explain that in the report. And I'd urge any member who wants more information about this service to make contact with and actually try and understand it in a little bit more detail, because it's a great service. Yes, I mentioned the 51.5%. I mean, I've also mentioned that the new framework that has come in, which gives us a slightly different metric, and that 7-day, you know, got to respond to a what we call a duty to report within that 7-day period. Again, reassurance. First thing we do is we safeguard people. So if that requires support, if somebody needs to be removed from where they are, or we need to put support in, that happens. The bit about then following up the other partners who might need to give us information, working out whether that's going to go further into the safeguarding system. Sometimes that is not completed within 7 days, but that doesn't mean guarded. Question about should we keep an eye on this? Yes, you should, and it will always feature in the metrics in the report. And I would like to think that next time this figure comes in, there will be an improvement in that and a rational explanation as to why and how that is or has happened. Your final comment about the survey information that's in there. Interestingly, with this new performance framework that has come in, the survey part of it is not ready yet. And we weren't willing to just drop our survey work. So what was called the community care survey, community care questionnaire it was called, it's been in place for, I want to say, somebody will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking 15 years. So that's what I was saying earlier about the satisfaction survey, and that evidence base is actually quite a solid evidence base, and we're not prepared to move away from that to a new one until a new one is established well. In terms of who gets that questionnaire, and this is just on the adult side at the moment, that goes out to people who are receiving support from us. If you're newly receiving support, you will get that survey, and you will also get that survey at a point of review during the year. So it's quite a well-established, I think, pretty robust measure of how we are managing our services. And I feel I always like it because it gives good figures, but also I know it's on a good foundation.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one quick follow-up. It's a quick one. Just on that last one. Thank you, Julie. When it says 79% of adults, can we have an indication of how many unique adults that is? To give us perspective
Not
of
off
the
the
size
top
of
of
cohort.
my head, yeah. Does it not have? We've started putting in. I don't know if it's in there. We have in the past put in the number that it relates to, but if we haven't, I'm sure we can find that information for you, and I'll make sure that you get that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Councillor Maureen Powell.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Julie, I admire you so much, and you've been such a stalwart there, and you've always been so positive and made things feel as though they're going to be better, whether they are or not. And I think, especially when you're dealing with people that are in difficult circumstances, if they're met with somebody who is happy and positive, it makes all the difference to them. They feel better just seeing you. And I thank you for all the work you've done for everybody in this county. And you've always been there, you know, so we're going to miss you very much. But I hope that you have a good retirement, and I hope that you do the things that you haven't had time to do before. And thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Those are lovely comments.
Thank you both. Councillor Tony Easton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Julie. I won't repeat all the accolades that's been given. I totally support them. But I come down to now and today and tomorrow, where you'll be looking in from the outside at the problems we still have societally, particularly bed blocking, for the care for the elderly, which is a problem in Monmouthshire which nobody has solved, and I can't see it being solved until we get the funding for it. And in particular, we've got the new system of hospitals in Gwent, whereby everything is put together on the Grange, and that seems to be causing a problem again with bed blocking, where our elderly people are going to go. I'd like to wonder what you'll be thinking and looking through the windows at the way the society is going, travelling in terms of resolving this bed blocking problem. But before you answer that, I've had lots of dealings with you with the children's services, and I believe that every support has been given to my constituents who need it, and I think that's been brilliant. But just your thoughts on where we're going as a society. We haven't got there yet. It's a long way away.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. The existential problem that is the social policy for care. Yeah, okay. I think we have a problem, and one of the things that I've certainly been talking about recently is the value that we place on care as a society. One of the things that we were talking about earlier this week as an SLT actually was about just thinking from a council perspective as well, how a lot of airtime might go on things that are universal. So, for example, you know, everybody drives on the roads, everybody has their refuge collected. Refuge? That sounded American. I don't mean, you know, waste. But not everybody is in touch with care. But when you are in touch with care, oh, don't you realise its value, and don't you realise, you know, what it's there to offer? And I think we're at a bit of a crossroads in society around the fact that the pandemic has highlighted a lot of these issues. It's also highlighted how perhaps health staff are revered more than social care staff, and that's not the right approach. It's a whole system. I think the pay issue in terms of what we pay for care, it can't stay where it is. We can't pay £9 or £10 an hour to recruit and retain staff and have a future for that workforce in this business. The issue that you raise around the hospital infrastructure, you know, I think members will be aware that the whole premise of having a critical care unit and having other hospitals like Melville Hall and the Royal Gwent being ancillary to that and supporting that, but also having a very large what we call a graduated care model into the community. That's what the plan was. That plan hasn't come to fruition because of lots of reasons, but the pandemic being one of them. But not a day goes by when I don't read on social media or hear stories in my role here and in life where it's cracking and it's not good. You know, one of the things that concerns me is that people are coming to harm in that system. Now, I know that there is real effort and real dedication to try trying to put that right and really trying to coordinate a different response. But ultimately, the sort of takeouts for me is we need to recognise and pay our, and when I say our work, the whole work, it's not just Monmouthshire, this is the whole sector. We need to recognise care as being an essential part of what we need as a humane society, would be my view. You're on mute.
Sorry. I've seen this at first hand recently, where a family member spent 8 hours lying on the ground waiting for an ambulance, and then another 6 hours outside the Grange. And that tells me, I've seen that with other people, it tells me that we have somehow got to find a way of providing more care at home, which is sustainable care at home. Thank you.
I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Louise Brown, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to reiterate the points that have been made by other councillors. To thank you very much for all your hard work in this particular area of work. And I think the thing I've most appreciated is your caring, people-centred approach. Which caring about the residents and caring about care. So I think for me that is one of the most important things. Because as an elected member, I also try to do my best for residents. They may not always think so, but I do try to do that. And I think with regard to the relational approach and the people approach, I very much hope that it's something that you mentioned in your presentation, and I very much hope that continues. And one of the areas that was mentioned in relation to that was the new night support thing, helping with loneliness and making contact with people. And I did watch the video of the lady saying how it brightened up her life and how it was being rolled out elsewhere. But I just wondered, in terms of its progress in terms of being rolled out elsewhere, and also the question of its funding, and if it is a sort of a successful pilot, how can we keep it going? Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Yeah, interesting. It started as a very small pilot in Abagbeni, in a small, when I say small, it started in Abagbeni, proved to be very, very successful. And actually we were successful in getting ICF, Intermediate Care Fund money to fund this going forward. It's seen as a very important strand of what we offer. What is interesting is that we're coming up, we had, I think it was 15 posts were advertised for working at night. Now, members will be aware that we're in a crisis in care, and actually we were able to recruit quite a heavy number of people to those posts. So there's obviously people who are willing to work perhaps at night time. There are certain areas where we are struggling. Monmouth is an area. Now, we struggle traditionally in Monmouth to recruit care workers to that area, and it's proving to be the same in the context of this nighttime service. So, people are looking at different ways in which to go about recruiting and making that a reality. But we are hopeful that we will be able to do this, because it's a vital component. Thinking back to the question that Tony asked about that care at home, if we can help people remain at home and not be bounced into hospital, wherever we can do that, we need to make sure that happens. So we'll keep trying to make sure that is rolled out across the whole of the county.
And Chair, could I ask a very short follow-up question? Yeah, I think are they? You mentioned the 15 posts. Are they sort of spread out among teams, or how does it actually operate? Yeah. And is there a sort of a length of time of their contract if it's a particular fund? Because obviously I think it sounds as if it's very useful work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in effect, it's replicated into the areas that we operate in. So whether that's Abagbeni and the surrounding areas, the south, Chepstow and Caldecott, may go out that way, and then the central Monmouth. It you know, in effect, it replicates our integrated service teams. It's integrated into that service. The money, yes, it's short-term money, but we've just had confirmation that the Integrated Care Fund ICF is going to be rolled forward for a further 5 years, which is really good news, because it's been a year-on-year fund that we've had to apply for. So there's some early work going on at the moment to look at which bits of service will continue in. I think this stands a very, very good chance of being one of those service areas that would be funded into the future. So that feels a little more secure, I think it's fair to say.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and all the best for your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor MS Peter Fox, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and hi Julie. Thanks so much again for your annual report. Your innovative way of demonstrating things is really welcome, and thanks for attaching that little thank you video. Anybody, if you haven't watched it, everybody watch it. If it doesn't bring a tear to your eye, there's something wrong with you, because it just captures, you know, what has been an absolutely terrible time for so many people. And thank God we've got people like you in the care system that we've had. And I know it's buckling at the moment and it's under strain, but it will get better. And I heard you say that the other day to some of your colleagues, that we will get through this. And there are some big challenges, and I think that challenge of pay and recognising the care system and care workers, that it's a fantastic career, but it needs rewarding, and we need to recognise that. And we're not going to get through this problem of waiting times for ambulances or pressure in the actual hospital settings themselves unless we can get that piece right. And thank you for your honesty, and you're always honest, and you know, it's been a pleasure, and I'm speaking as a past leader. I've known you for lots of years. It's been great to have you as part of our senior leadership team as well in latter years. We have been blessed in Monmouthshire with you know, tremendous people, and you've demonstrated that massively. And I don't know, we can't really capture in a few words the amount that you have contributed to the people of this county and across Wales through your other wider roles as well. So on behalf of certainly myself as a past leader, but I know I speak on behalf of all members here, as we've already heard, we just want to say a big thank you for everything you've done. You know, you'll be leaving a stressful role, but believe me, and you already know, chasing sheep is equally as stressful, especially when they get out and you've got to try and find them in the dark or something. So I wish you well with that. And I hope you don't have too many stressful times, and just enjoy your retirement. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Howarth, please.
Yes, and good afternoon, Chairman. Julie, I'll just go to the report first of all. There's a couple of graphs in there, Julie, which they seem to go high and then they totally drop off with a gap between them, and then they go high again. Can you just explain what that is? And I think it did come up in Select, and I wasn't too sure. There were graphs on I think on data. They dropped right off, and there was a gap. And then I don't think we've had a response to why it was there. Do we have a response yet to that?
We do. We do.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the only question, Julie.
Thank you, Simon. And yes, it did come up in Select, and I was grateful for you pointing it out, because it meant that I could go and find out what was that gap, and that gap was Christmas. So right. Either side of the Christmas period, the activity around collecting the data sort of stopped. So you'll see that it falls in both of those places. That was the explanation. I hope that helps.
Oh, that's something so simple then.
Yes.
And just really on everything what's been said, we said our goodbyes some weeks ago, and just wish you well. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much, everyone. And we haven't got any more members' questions at the moment. So as this is a statutory director's performance report, we don't have to go to the vote, and so we can just accept it. So thank you very much for that. And I'll go to Councillor Richard John, Leader of the Council, so which I believe you wanted to say a few words.
Thank you so much. Hi, Julie, and thank you so much for that report. And there were a few things in your report that really stood out for me. But you said in your presentation that our teams of carers are brilliant, and they really are. But they're also really well led. And working in social care is never just a job, is it? It's a passion for people and for delivering on that moral obligation that we have to protect the most vulnerable in our society. Now, I know that you began your local government career as a carer when you were just 19 years old, and we're all so grateful that you made that choice and the way in which you've inspired so many of your colleagues during your time here in Monmouthshire. I mean, over the time you've been here, you've touched the lives of so many people. Services like My Mates serve as an illustration of the way in which you've always focused on what matters to people, thinking about what helps them to live a fulfilling life in a way that matters to them, rather than just fitting them into a box as a service user. These vital services have been a lifeline for so many people, particularly during the pandemic. Often a carer is the only human contact a vulnerable person might have. And you're absolutely right, it's a service that often goes under the radar. When I'm out talking to residents in my ward, they'll say, well, I pay my council tax and we haven't got any street lights, we don't use any of the services out in the towns. But actually, you know, I think there's a responsibility for us to do more to tell people about social services and the life-changing work that carers do across our county. And it really is time that we properly valued the care service in this country. But Julie, we're so proud of what you've achieved, not just as Chief Officer, but throughout your career. And I just wanted to say, on behalf of the whole council and all of us as elected members, we wish you the very best for the future, and thank you for everything that you've done so much over the years for our communities. We will miss you, and you leave a legacy that you can have every confidence will continue to make a difference to the lives of so many people here in Monmouthshire for many years to come. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. That's really, really kind. Can I just say a couple of words before I finish, if that's okay, Chair? I just want to extend my thanks for all the thanks to Council. I've really enjoyed this aspect of my role. It's I wouldn't have expected myself to say that, but I have really enjoyed it. I leave knowing that I'm cherished and loved, and that's all that anyone can really ask for. So thank you.
Julie, send us the postcard. Thank you ever so much. And enjoy it. Thank you very much. Members, we'll move on. Julie, thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, all members, for the comments in that part. Moving on to 5.2, Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report. Mr. Philip White will be presenting this. Mr. White.
Again, right, microphone on now. Yes,
we can hear you now.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, I just said thank you for inviting me to address the committee this afternoon with the annual report from the Audit Committee for last year. Looking at the report, as we see set down under recommendations, you'll see that on behalf of the Audit Committee, I'm submitting the annual report for 2021 for consideration by the Council. I believe that it shows over this period that the committee has fulfilled its role as defined in its terms of reference. Now, the committee continued to function as usual during the year, despite the special circumstances arising from the COVID emergency. Regular reports were received from the Chief Officer for Resources on the impact of the pandemic on the operations of the authority and the performance of investments. As a consequence of the Local Government and Election Wales Act 2021, the committee is now known as the Governance and Audit Committee. This does not directly affect the report in front of you, but work to redesign the committee in line with the legislative requirements and also to improve the effectiveness of the committee is ongoing. The report will withstand detailed examination. While not wishing to go into all the detail in this presentation, some notable points are that the committee met 7 times in the year. Attendance from the 10 councillors and 1 co-opted member never fell below 8 attending. All of our meetings were well supported by officers from the authority and the Wales Audit Office, now known as Audit Wales. Major contributors to the agendas included Audit Wales, the authority's own internal audit service, the authority's finance officers and the policy and performance managers. The committee undertook a self-assessment of its performance during the year, with the Chief Internal Auditor taking a leading role. As well as significant major recurrent issues such as the annual statement of accounts and the subsequent external audit, internal audits and the annual governance statement, topics considered during the year included strategic risk assessment, treasury reports, monitoring of reserves, annual performance review of the investment committee, anti-bribery risk assessment, information breaches, and the whole authority annual complaints report. So I'll conclude again, quoting from recommendations. The report shows that the workings of the committee continue to be both valuable and productive, and it provides assurance to the council regarding the committee's activities in the effective governance of financial affairs and other matters by the authority. And in support of this statement, I submit the report to the council. So thank you.
Mr. White, thank you very much for your report. Members, now questions. Councillor Tony Easton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. White, for your report. I fully endorse the report as being a member of the committee. Only one comment: we've got 11 members and 1 co-opted, not 10 as in the report, but that's just maybe they didn't count me. This will be the last but one report before, well, for next year, the last year of the council. After that, there's going to be a change, a potential change in governance and audit committees made up from directions of the Welsh Government, which would, in my mind, reduce the members involved in the committee, which I don't think would be a good thing. And I know we're going to be talking about this in the next number of months. But as it stands now, we've got a political balance of 7-2-1-1 plus the co-opted member. I would like to see a view that this committee would be increased to maybe 15 or 60 members to retain the political balance and numbers, plus taking in the 4 co-opted members. It's just a thought I've got. I thought I'd bring it to council today, but I support the report, and just with those thoughts, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. The issues about the number of members of the committee would be part of the considerations which are going on at the moment, and meetings are scheduled to take place. So no doubt those thoughts can be fed through. I did notice a discrepancy between the number of members of the committee in the report and the number that we currently have. And I actually checked back on the membership list from the January meeting in 2021, and that was 10+1. So whether we were holding a vacancy at the time, I'm not sure, but I agree with you what the numbers are now. So Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. Councillor Petruni.
Thank you, Chair. It's just one question on the report, 3.8. The committee undertook a self-assessment of its performance during the year. I might have missed it. What was the result of that self-assessment?
To be frank, I would have to look back at the papers and see what was actually done. I don't think it was a high-level thing. I think that the Chief Internal Auditor made some recommendations and the committee considered it, but I don't think it was a substantial review.
So it wasn't, if I may, Chair.
Please.
So it wasn't councillors reviewing their own performance. It was the Chief Internal Auditor giving you recommendations of how the committee may improve. and then you guys considered it, but as far as you know, there's no outcomes or actions from it.
No, just the minutes of the meetings. I'm sure. I'll look into it if you want, Councillor, and I'll let you have what I have.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you very much, both. Mr. White, thank you very much again for your report. We don't have any more members' questions, and I can confirm that the report is accepted. So thank you for that. We shall move on then to 5.3, which is the Corporate Plan Annual Report 2020-2021. So I believe Councillor Richard John, this is you.
Hi, afternoon everyone. Pleased to have the chance to offer an update today on our corporate plan. This was the document that we set out at the start of this 5-year term, setting out the council's ambitions. And today's report updates members on the progress that's been made in the last year, not just on the original objectives of the plan, but the work that the authority has been doing during the pandemic to keep our residents safe, support children and young people, both in terms of their mental and physical well-being, as well as their education, and protecting essential services. The report reiterates our values, priorities and pledges alongside progress, areas of outstanding challenge, and key indicators demonstrating measurable progress. As we've charted a course through the pandemic, we've amended our priorities through a series of coronavirus strategy documents, which we've condensed into a single plan on a page, offering both clarity and accountability. Our number one priority throughout this time has remained offering children the very best possible start in life. And as soon as the first lockdown began, we opened up childcare hubs for vulnerable children and the children of key workers, which at their peak offered childcare for over 400 pupils per day. This is in addition to providing laptops and other digital devices to young people to assist with their digital learning. We had a full inspection from Estin early on in 2020, which recognised our focus on offering children the best possible start in life, and our strategic objectives quickly aligned to Estin's additional recommendations. Design work continues now on our brand new school in Abagbeni, the single biggest investment in Abagbeni in a generation. I'm hopeful the new school will be one of the most environmentally friendly in the country, zero carbon, packed with state-of-the-art technology, fit for the new curriculum, and will play a key part in levelling up Abagbeni. And Paul Pavia will be giving members a full update at our next cabinet meeting. Significant school investment in Chepstow School has taken place over the summer, and plans continue to assess capacity in preparation for Band C of the 21st Century Schools programme. 2020 saw the start of our Compass for Life scheme, which encourages learners in year 5 and 6 to identify their aspirations, but also to learn how to be more resilient learners. I think one of the best things we can do for children from deprived backgrounds is to instill in them a sense of ambition, drive to achieve, and to help them secure a better future for themselves and their family. That's a key route out of poverty, securing a path towards employment and a rewarding career. Many children in Monmouthshire had a fantastic summer of fun through the inspiring work of Mon Life, based at our leisure centres, in addition to the SHEP scheme, which was run over the summer. The activity hub saw a total of over 4,000 attendances, an average of 166 children per day, and we offered support particularly to vulnerable pupils and further pupils eligible for free school meals. Earlier on this year, Care Inspectorate Wales carried out an assurance check to review how well social services continue to help and support adults and children throughout the pandemic, with a particular focus on safety and well-being. This resulted in very positive feedback and provided help in a number of areas where we can continue to make progress and improve our offer to those in need. Social services have worked closely with education welfare officers, the education psychology team, to offer support to vulnerable children and their families at what's been an extraordinarily challenging time. These lockdowns have undoubtedly hit the youngest hardest, cut off from their friends and dealing with the destabilising effect of the loss of that regular rhythm of going to school. As an authority, we've supported businesses throughout the year to help them meet the challenges and uncertainty of the pandemic, issuing over 6,500 payments of grants amounting to just under £40 million. And often we've distributed that money to local authorities before we've actually received it ourselves from Welsh Government, recognising how important it is to keep our businesses going. Work on the LDP over the last year has been delayed due to the pandemic, but a revised timetable has been agreed and discussions with Welsh Government continue about how we can deliver more affordable housing to prevent younger people being priced out of their own communities here. We're working with partners, including Welsh Water and NRW, to address water quality issues in our rivers, which could be barriers to delivering affordable housing. And we continue to play our full part in the Cardiff Capital Region, and we're specifically working together on projects to improve access at railway stations at Severn Tunnel Junction and Abagbeni. We're investing more in highways and drain cleaning, as well as completing a survey of every inch of road in the county to ensure a more strategic approach to fixing our roads in future. We're making more progress than ever before in active travel with projects, particularly in Abagbeni, Monmouth and Caldecott. We're continuing to roll out electric vehicle charging points, a key commitment in our climate emergency strategy, along with improved waste management. We've also seen the success of our reuse shops, which help fund tree planting, of which we've planted 8,000 in the last year. This year, we're delivering more 20-mile-an-hour zones in residential areas than anywhere else in Wales. And post-pandemic, we're making it easier for people to take responsibility for their own mental and physical well-being by renewing our leisure centres. A £1.7 million project is underway at Abagbeni Leisure Centre, while we have a bid to the UK Government's Levelling Up Fund for a £14 million investment in Caldecott to include a brand new leisure centre. And Councillor Sarah Jones and I were pleased to spend a day in London last week lobbying, meeting with government ministers and MPs and explaining exactly what we want to achieve in our two levelling up bids. We'll now be able to invest in our outdoor education service to bring it up to a better standard, because we took the difficult decision to centralise the service at Gilwern. Despite the significant impact on tourism, we've maintained an innovative and creative destination marketing programme to welcome visitors safely back to Monmouthshire, working alongside Welsh Government to make our town centres COVID secure. We also overhauled our working practices to reinstate the decision-making process, which meant that the first virtual meeting of Cabinet happened just 6 weeks after the lockdown started, making Monmouthshire one of the very first councils in the country to do so. Full council meetings followed, and by July last year, all committees were meeting remotely to ensure continuity of robust scrutiny and decision-making. In just a couple of minutes, it's impossible to cover everything that our organisation has achieved in the past year, but everything that has been achieved has been thanks to the tireless efforts of our carers, our teachers, support workers, our refuse and highways crews, our Mon Life workers, community champions right across the county. This has been the biggest period of turmoil that we've experienced in generations, but I feel really proud of the way that everyone has pulled together to support our communities through this. So it's been a challenging period, but we really have an opportunity now to help level up our communities and help ensure that people who live in Monmouthshire have services they can rely on and facilities that they need. So I look forward to working with all of you across the chamber over the coming months to continue the progress on this plan and deliver on those commitments. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Leader. We'll go to questions, members' questions. Councillor Bertuni, please.
Thank you, Chair. And that was on the scale delusional that you could ever hear from a leader. I don't call him a leader, actually, he's not leading anything. 3 or 4 points. First point, and Councillor John repeats this all the time, and it gets me really angry, is that he says children have been hit the hardest. I would say the people who lost their lives and the families who lost their lives to COVID would be hit the hardest. It's not a competition, but people who've lost their lives surely should be at the foremost of our minds and thoughts during this tragic time. Second, Councillor John seemed to conflate the two of levelling up, monies, which have gone to Monmouth and Caldicot, are not to Abagbeni. You conflate it as a levelling up to Abagbeni with 21st century school money, which is half given by the Welsh Labour government. I'm sure it was a mistake to conflate the two, but I'm a bit sceptical on that. 2 points of substance back to the reality of the report rather than Councillor John's nonsense. 1, on social justice, page 45 and 46, it talks about the 3rd iteration of a social justice strategy, revising terms, understanding what we're going to target. But then if you look at the targets, actual quantitative measures, and I've been on about this for years, if not nearly a decade now in my 2nd term, and again, no measurable, identifiable progress, no measurable, identifiable impact. We've just done a 3rd report, another bit of words, another vision, no actual action, no actual driven impact on people's lives out there. We have officers that took me through 3 or 4 years of lobbying to get that. I'll give you that. But other than that, there's no quantitative measure in this corporate plan. Make a meaningful impact's just bluster. And if you look at all the goals set out by this Conservative administration in its corporate plan, every single one of them is adequate. It's your own plan. Every single one of them is adequate. So is Councillor John an adequate leader for an adequate council?
Councillor John?
Thank you. Well, after that, there was only actually one question in that. I haven't mixed up the Levelling Up Fund and the 21st Century Schools programme. What they said was that the Abagbeni school is going to be a fantastic asset for the community. It's going to be a massive benefit for all the children who live in the wider Abagbeni area, and it will help level up the town. That's exactly what it's going to do, and we're, you know, that is a massive financial commitment for us as an organisation, but we recognise the difference it's going to make to the life chances of children across the county. So it's something we're absolutely committed to. We have been clear in this document that we haven't yet achieved everything we would aspire to in our initial corporate plan or in the manifesto, but this is an annual report on the progress that's been made, and at the end of every chapter there is a set of indicators, and you can see we're making really pleasing progress on it. I welcome the progress, but you know, in no way do we think job done, everything's sorted. We've got a lot more to do. We've had enormous challenges as a local authority, but I think the way that members and officers have worked to face those challenges and support our communities, the overriding priority through this pandemic has been to protect the lives of vulnerable people, and the way in which communities have pulled together, and we've supported numerous volunteer groups across the county to support vulnerable people, and I feel really proud of the work that's been done. So this, you know, this is a document that isn't job done. There's lots more we need to do, but we're an administration that's ambitious for this county. I haven't heard any alternative proposals from the opposition, but you know, we're quite happy to work across party. If there are suggestions that other councillors would like us to take on board, you know, we're more than happy to work across party divides. So I'm sorry that Councillor Petruni has used this as an opportunity to have a bit of a rant and a diatribe, really. But you know, we are more than happy to have a constructive debate about how we can deliver on these commitments and how we can make Monmouthshire a more economically vibrant, more caring, more sustainable county where people can live their lives and in the safe knowledge that they have access to those vital services that we deliver as an organisation.
Thank you. Councillor Tudor-Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I must admit, without going over the points that Councillor Petruni's given, but in Abagbeni, I represent the town centre ward. Many people would not agree with much that is in that report. They're very unhappy with the levelling up money that's coming from central government, which is trying to circumvent Welsh government. And obviously Abagbeni has had nothing from that pot of money. Money has gone elsewhere, and it's not being sort of looking after our interest, but I read the document and it said about areas of high deprivation. There are some incredibly high areas of deprivation in Abagbeni, and they will get nothing. We won't get a new leisure centre. There will be a revamp on the current provision, but that goes back to 1971. That building was put up in 1971, and revamping it, painting it, bit more new equipment, it's not going to make a huge difference. Plus the fact, in terms of things that Richard John says about education, and that is the only way to get up, but it is incredibly difficult for youngsters coming from challenging backgrounds, and youngsters coming from backgrounds where there isn't a great deal of money, and that's going to be exacerbated now by national government, Conservative government, cutting the £20 a week universal credit. There was a huge article on it last night on Newsnight. That's going to have a huge effect across England, but it's also going to have a huge effect on Wales. So I'm afraid this sort of rosy picture of the corporate plan, things like roads, many people in Abagbeni totally disagree, and we've had huge ructions there over resurfacing the Hereford Road, which now has been done. But people are not as happy as I think possibly Councillor John thinks. It's not quite the story that he's painting. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor John, do you want to respond to any of those comments?
Yeah, I don't know if there are any other speakers.
No, not yet. So we'll go to the vote.
Okay. Okay. So well, Tudor, I'm sorry you're talking down the investments we're making in Abagbeni. I mean, we're looking at a brand new school in the town, which is going to cost well over £50 million, the biggest single investment that's been made in Abagbeni in at least a generation. And I have to say, I was really disappointed that the town council voted against that project. That's a massive investment in the life chances of young people in the town. We're also, Councillor Lisa Dimmock's going to be bringing forward a report later this afternoon of further investment in Abagbeni with the Borough Theatre, £1.7 million in the leisure centre. I'm sorry you're talking that down. That's going to make a massive difference to the mental and physical health of people in Abagbeni, and an opportunity to take part in physical and group exercise in a brand new gym. There's going to be a spin studio, a dance studio. It's going to be a state-of-the-art leisure centre, and we're really proud of that investment that is now underway. In terms of the two levelling up bids that went in, it was a tight deadline to submit the bids. And there are many local authorities across the country, some Labour-led, that didn't submit any bids to the UK government's Levelling Up Fund at all. They've completely passed on the opportunity to secure millions of pounds for their communities. We put in two bids in this local authority, two really ambitious bids. The Caldecott bid is going to be a brand new leisure centre, investment in the town centre, improved active travel links between the town and key public transport hubs. So, you know, that's going to be a massive benefit to the town of Caldecott, and I'm really sorry that you don't seem to think that's a worthy investment. You know, Councillor Sarah Jones and I have been really pushing these bids. We were in London meeting as many people as we could, encouraging them to back the bid. I have to say, our two local MPs have been extremely supportive of these bids. Jessica Morden included is a big champion of the Caldecott bid, and we're very grateful for her support. So we're really proud of the investments we're making in Abagbeni, and I think they're going to make a real difference to the life chances of people who live there. So I'm really proud of those, and I'm sorry you're talking them down, Tudor.
Councillor John, I must apologise, because just as I said, there was no one else asking questions. Councillor Lisa Dimmock popped up on my screen, so
Chair, if I may, I also put my hand up, whether you can see it or not. This is about 5 minutes ago. I promise you.
There's no hand in the hand. There's no hand.
Well, I keep clicking it and it's nothing happening. Maybe it's just erroneously happened again. We're up.
Do you want to take Councillor Watts's question and I'll come in after him?
That's very decent of you.
Oh, you're on mute.
Councillor Watts.
I'm quite happy to let Lisa go first and come after Lisa, you know.
No, I'm happy for you to go first, please, Armand.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I mean, I think Councillor John's view of the county is slightly wonky, because I think there is definitely further consideration needed for the more deprived areas of Monmouthshire. And once I accept that Monmouthshire doesn't have any areas, you know, any wards within the county that fall within the top 10 in Wales, there certainly is need and a better understanding of deprivation with the authority. I'm not entirely sure some of the officers fully understand where that need is, and more work needs to be done to identify it. As for the grant, as for the levelling up money, the £2.6 million in Monmouth, the evidence for that was that, and I read the application, there is evidence of deprivation in the rural hinterland. Well, that may be so, but that's not a definitive case really, when, you know, for example, in Thornwell, where there's a Flying Start scheme, you know, they haven't had a penny spent on it for 18 years. So I do think that it's disproportionate, really, the considerations given to relatively wealthy town like Monmouth, and then, you know, at the same time, you're quite prepared to ignore then, I guess, traditional working class wards where there is evidence of real deprivation and need, and, you know, a necessity to support those communities who are going to be hit the hardest through excessive inflation, energy bills, and losing the £20 as well a week. You know, this is not Richard John's world. He doesn't live in the same kind of context that we do. He doesn't have to deal with the same kind of cases. So I'm going to rest my case there. Thank you for listening, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watts. Councillor John, do you want to answer any of those comments? Or respond to any of those?
Yes, I would. But can we take the other contributions first, and then I'll respond to Armand's points then as well, if that's okay.
That's very good. Thank you very much. Councillor Lisa Dimmock.
Thank you, Chair. I've got to apologise for the lighting. I'm in the spare bedroom and I've only got Velux windows, so before anyone raises that they can't see me properly, I do apologise. It's really just to say that I'm really disappointed what Councillor Tudor Thomas said about the investment in Abagbeni Leisure Centre. Tudor, I really do advise you to come and have a look. I'll show you around. What we're doing there is going to be fantastic. You know, and I'm about to bring this report on the Borough Theatre. We're doing some fantastic things in Abagbeni. I strongly disagree with you. We're not saying that we're getting everything right and celebrating, but we're just telling you on the good things we are doing. I will happily meet and show you the leisure centre. The Monlife team are doing a fantastic job there, and it's going to make a real difference for the users, that refurbishment that we're doing. And with regards to Councillor Watts's comments about ignoring the communities in need, you know, I know Tripster is having a small refurb done, but come to Caldicot, it's horrific. I cannot believe we're actually providing Caldicot Leisure Centre as it is. It is in desperate need, and I welcome this levelling up bid, and I want to thank you, Councillor John and Councillor Jones, for lobbying UK government and trying to get that funding. So yeah, Tudor, please get in touch, and I'll take you for a visit to the Leisure Centre and the hard work that's going on there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dimmock. Councillor Jez Becker.
Thank you, Chair. I too have to apologise for the lighting. It's no doubt responsible for the brightness of my shirt. I would also say to Tudor, Tudor, obviously we're very sorry that you got that money. You should try being Chepstow, my friend. We haven't got a school that's being refurbished. We're not getting any money spent on us. We're getting some lights fixed in the swimming pool and our high street completely ignored. So I also agree that the picture being painted by Councillor John is skewed and doesn't represent really what's happening on the ground. I understand that we've got an awful lot of expenditure and there has to be a priority list of who gets the money, but I mean, we're sitting down in Chepstow just completely neglected, and I don't just mean that as the high street, I mean that at Thornwell as well. So I'd like to hear what the plan is for that going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. So we won't take any more questions after this. We'll go to the vote. But Councillor John, do you want to respond to any of those comments?
Yeah, I did see a message that Paul Jordan was trying to raise his hand.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
if
go
I
on.
can come in, Chair.
Councillor Jordan, then. So I don't know why that hasn't come up in the.
Because my raised hand function doesn't work.
Oh, okay, apologies. Okay, Councillor Jordan.
Okay. I mean, with the greatest respect to Councillor Tudor Thomas, he obviously forgets that our council has spent a huge amount of money pedestrianising the centre of Abagbeni. We're spending well over £1 million on the refurbishment of the leisure centre. He would have read in the council agenda today the report in respect of the Borough Theatre, where we're going to be spending in the region of £1 million refurbishing that. We're having a new school. What does Tudor Thomas actually want? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Okay, this will be no more members' questions, please, and we'll go to Councillor John to respond to any of those comments before we go to the vote.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, we're making massive investments in Abagbeni at the moment. So I really don't understand this argument from some of the Labour members this afternoon that we're neglecting Abagbeni somehow. I mean, you know, a new school of over £50 million is the biggest single investment the authority has ever made anywhere. We've got £1.7 million going into the leisure centre. We're working on plans for a new cycle track near Llanfoist. We've got the Borough Theatre paper, which Lisa Dimmock's going to be presenting later this afternoon. I really don't see how you can argue that we are not investing in Abagbeni. In terms of the point from Councillor Watts, of course, we recognise that there are significant pockets of deprivation across the county. We often say in this virtual chamber that we are concerned that the levels of poverty, the fact that they are in pockets, means that it's often not recognised by Welsh Government, and we've long had concerns about these pockets of deprivation that go under the radar. And in terms of Monmouth, you paint a picture of Monmouth as this land of milk and honey. In Wisham, in Overmono, there are significant pockets of deprivation. So, you know, we try to be fair to all the towns and all the communities in Monmouthshire, but we have to prioritise and we have to make really difficult decisions. Lisa's absolutely right. You know, that investment that we need in Caldecott Leisure Centre is desperately needed. And, you know, that's why Councillor Jones and I have been really fighting for this and trying to get Monmouthshire's voice heard in London so that we have the best possible chance of securing that funding. And as I say, there are many local authorities across the country that haven't submitted any bids at all to the UK government's Levelling Up Fund. You know, we felt if there's an opportunity there to secure funding for our communities in Monmouthshire, then absolutely we need to be at the table bidding for that. And we're, in terms of Chepstow, we are talking with neighbours about how we can secure investment for Chepstow. So I had a meeting a few days ago with the leader of Gloucestershire County Council. One of the top things we were talking about is how we can work together on a Chepstow bypass. It's something that's needed on both sides of the English-Welsh border, and it's something we're going to continue to work together. But you know, this report is honest about exactly where we stand as a local authority. You know, there has been some fantastic, phenomenal work done by our teams across the county over the past year. But we recognise there are some significant challenges, and despite being the worst funded local authority in the country, we're doing everything we can to meet those challenges and to meet the expectations and the needs of our residents, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you very much, Leader. Okay, so the recommendation is on page 13 of the pack at 2.1, and I'll read it out, that the corporate plan annual report 2020-2021 be approved. So we'll go to the vote now. That's in the chat bar function. So if members could submit their votes, please. Okay, that has overwhelmingly been accepted, so thank you very much, members all. And we'll move on then to 5.4 on the agenda, Borough Theatre Abagbeni Refurbishment Programme. Councillor Lisa Dimmock.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is seeking approval for the refurbishment programme for the much loved Abagbeni Theatre and for the local authority to conclude discussions with Abagbeni Town Council on any further contributions to meeting the funding gap, and the council to underwrite any remaining shortfall, which the Section 151 officer will decide the most appropriate funding in the form of capital receipts or borrowing. When the theatre returned to MCC in 2018, we reviewed operations over 6 months. When the theatre reopened in Monmouthshire, returned to Monmouthshire in 2018, we reviewed all operations over a 6-month period in 2018. It was approved by Cabinet to recruit a theatre manager, Dave Baxter, who's on today, along with front of house supervisors. Since this new appointment, the team have worked with the Arts Council Wales to develop a more sustainable plan for the theatre. Many of you have visited the theatre and know it's in a very poor state and it's not accessible to those with mobility issues. The heating and cooling is inadequate, and we received a number of customer feedback complaining about the lack of legroom. When we started to carry out in-depth surveys to the Grade 2 listed building, the extent of the work developed. The capital development plans for the Borough Theatre will support the 5 key goals as outlined in the report, but the refurbishment would see a beautiful theatre brought up to date, become more accessible for all. It would improve the whole customer experience, a better quality venue for our local and international performers, and the new retractable seating, which I know it does decrease the number of seats, but it would allow for the space to be utilised for more things like catwalk and cabaret. The team went to market for a principal contractor, and unfortunately we saw the costs increase. This is mainly due to the global pandemic, local supply shortages, the Suez Canal blockage also presented issues with regards to driving costs up and global shortages, and some added value benefits like the cable runs. So the total cost of the refurbishment is now coming short of 1.1 million. The current available budget stands at 313,681, with a shortfall of 728,943 to be managed. Office have identified the following funding, which is 175,000 from Welsh Government Transforming Towns grant, 175,000 from Monmouthshire Capital Grant match funding, 100,000 approved MCC Access for All budget, leaving 278 to be secured. 107,000 is a contingency figure, which is standard practice. The theatre has a huge value to the county, and we aspire to make Abagbeni the cultural arts centre as it brings people together. And this is not just for Abagbeni, but Monmouthshire as a whole. Can I just take a moment to thank members for their support so far? Both Abagbeni members, and in particular Councillor Thomas and Councillor Woodhouse, the Economy and Development members, and the members in Cabinet last week. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Dimmock. Councillor Maureen Powell, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Lisa. This isn't so much a question, but this is to support this theatre. It's not just for Abagbeni, definitely not. The Borough Theatre in Abagbeni has been well known for many, many, many years, and we've had not just odd events coming here. We've had choirs from all over Wales. We've had the schools from all over Abagbeni. We've had various amateur groups. We have a lot of amateur groups in Abagbeni. AODs, both senior and junior, and I know that Sheila Woodhouse will give you much more than I can say because she's been here longer than I have. But I do think it's very important. This is a magnificent building, and if it wasn't refurbished and put good for use, it would deteriorate, and that would be the end of it. The main thing that's been the problem has been the air conditioning and the atmosphere in there, because unless that's put right, it's not safe for people to be there in a lot of great numbers. And we need, that's very important, that that part of it is refurbished and redone. And I wish that everybody will support the theatre and find some way or other of raising money so that we can go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. There wasn't a question posed, so we'll go on to Councillor Tudor Thomas.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Obviously, I fully support the refurbishment of the Borough Theatre in Abagbeni. It's right in my ward, and I know the affection in which it is held by the community in Abagbeni, and obviously in the wider areas. And people travel from quite a wide range to actually attend performances there. There are so many user groups there, you know, A4B, AODS, etc., who regularly use the theatre and support it. It's a vital facility in the town, and it obviously has gone on to poorer times, unfortunately, in the last few years. It offers people a wide range. It offers people from a wide range of people to the opportunity to actually enjoy plays, musicals, etc. And it's there as a centre for the town. For lots of people in Abagbeni, as in other towns, I'm not saying, who are unable to travel further afield, and they can then get a cultural experience. And it's also for people on lower incomes who can't afford to go to the Millennium in Cardiff or to London or wherever. Obviously, the town council has yet to decide, and I think possibly my colleague, Councillor Grogan, will say something about this. But you know, in reality, this is such a big development. It is a county council responsibility, which I wholeheartedly support. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Sheila Woodhouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say that, first of all, I need to declare a personal non-prejudicial interest as a member of an amateur society that hires the theatre. But I'd like to sort of point out some of the significant facts about the history of the theatre. It's very unfortunate to see how the costs of the project have escalated due to the unforeseen circumstances, but it has played a most significant role in the cultural and social lives of the people of Abagbeni. It's vitally important this refurbishment goes ahead. This theatre has been in constant use for over 100 years, and it is home to the oldest pantomime society in Wales. In wartime, it was used by an amateur dramatic company for rehearsals, which included many servicemen based in the area, amongst them Richard Todd and Clive Dunn. In the 60s, amongst more famous people to visit there were the Beatles, Lulu, Pink Floyd, Craig Douglas, Tom Jones, known then as Tommy Scott at the Senators, John Barry, and many others. Today, it is used as a key venue for the food festival, and amongst frequent users, it's the Abagbeni Amateur Operatic Dramatic Society, which has been mentioned previously, both seniors and juniors. Also the Pantomime Company, Abagbeni History Society, Abagbeni Borough Band. It also used for charity concerts as well as a full programme of guest visitors, which have included the late Rodney Bewes, the Quarrymen, Iolo Williams, Owen Money, Sue Pollard, just to name but a few. The theatre is also blessed with many volunteers who between them have decades of service, and they are eagerly awaiting this refurbishment. Many primary schools have had concerts there, and it's been used for local Eisteddfod concerts. So I hope this gives you some idea of not only the theatre's wonderful past history, but its importance today, and the opportunity to perform at this venue must continue. It is the final part of the refurbishment of our historic town hall. It's hugely popular and well used by both residents and visitors alike. Families enjoy a night out with a meal and a visit to the theatre. Visitors walking through the town are most impressed with the quality of hospitality and independent shops and make return visits. So it enhances the vibrancy of Abagbeni, and I do hope most sincerely members will be able to support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Woodhouse. Councillor Martin Groker.
Thank you, Chair. The sun shining in here appears to be making me look more like a zebra, so I'll try and make sure that I'm zebra light. Thank you. I'd just like to comment briefly in my role as chair of the Policy and Resources Committee of Abagbeni Town Council, as we seem to be almost a partner in this report, and there is a request that the Town Council in Abagbeni supplies more financial resources to enable this refurbishment to go ahead. The first point I would make is that in Abagbeni, the Labour-controlled town council has used its resources prudently, and I believe has made a very major impact in improving the life of the community in the town. But we are not a cash cow, and we get our precept from a population of around 12,000 people. We've already given £50,000 to the theatre, and we've already also entered into a longer term commitment to support the Melville Arts Centre, which again was at one time run by Monmouthshire County Council. I think one concern that town councillors will have, and we've seen it reciprocated in other services as well, is that the county, when it's short of money, automatically turns to its town councils and asks that they cough up in areas that traditionally have not been seen as a town council area of responsibility. We will certainly look very carefully at ways in which we can continue to enhance the life of people in our town. And if it's appropriate, we will come forward with more money on top of the 50,000 we've also given to the theatre. And in that light, I'm meeting Cass Fallon and Dave Baxter, the manager of the theatre, immediately after County Council has finished this afternoon. I would make the point that we get our precept, which is our only source of money, of course, from our town population. And yet there are many people, a far greater number of people, who come into town, who live in neighbouring community councils, Llanfoist, Mardy, and so on. And these people are not being asked to contribute a penny towards the theatre. I would hope that as part of looking to fill this funding gap, we can try to get a fair proportion of money from people in those other communities that come into town to benefit from the theatre. So in conclusion, there are no conclusions drawn yet. I will be meeting senior officers. I will be writing a report, and that will be considered by the full council in Abagbeni in coming weeks. But just as Councillor Tudor Thomas, who's a colleague town councillor of mine in Abagbeni, has said, we do value the theatre. We would certainly be very, very loath to see it not going forward as a great venue for the arts, but make the point that Abagbeni Town Council is not a cash cow, and we cannot automatically be seen as jumping in to support County Council when huge shortfalls in their own budgeting procedures seem to be jeopardising projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gruca. Councillor Dimitri Truni.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is on the financial management and the reasoning and rationale for why Abagbeni Borough Theatre gets a greater say of capital monies from Monmouthshire County Council, as opposed to other culturally significant arenas, venues, places within the county. I support the money towards Abagbeni Borough Theatre, but I want to understand, how could officers and a cabinet member get the financial kind of costs so wrong? Yep, undoubtedly the pandemic's had an effect on prices and supply. Is that entirely down to the pandemic, the poor financial management of this refurbishment? Or have there been slip-ups within the office or the cabinet member not spotting errors early on? Second, could the cabinet member break down precisely why Abagbeni Borough Theatre gets this support, which I support, as vis-a-vis any other culturally significant venue or site in the county? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dimmock, do you want to answer those questions now, or would you prefer?
Yeah, if I could go back to Martin's points raised. Obviously, we do not see Abagbeni Town Council as a cash cow. A lot of successful projects are a partnership. We can look to ask from financial support from the other community councils, but they are small community councils, but we could ask them to do things like sponsor seats. So I will task Dave Baxter with that. The costs are not wrong. The reasons are detailed in the report in 7.3, which I'll just read out for Councillor Batruni.
Chair, I didn't ask if the cost was wrong. I said, why did they get it? Why did the increase escalate so much? Why did the management of it go so wrong?
So
not whether the costs are wrong.
Costs, like I said, when I opened up the report, the costs have increased because of the pandemic and the Suez Canal. You know, there's 20,000 containers on that one shipment, and I think, is it 50 ships go through that canal every day? When there was that blockage, that drove costs up because building products were, how do I put this, short. There was a huge shortage coming north, so that's what's driven it up. You know, if you go to Jewson's or Travis Perkins and buy any type of building products now, you will see that they've, you know, the inflation is astronomical.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dimmock. I'll move on to Councillor Jeremy Beck.
Chair, she didn't answer my question of why Borough Theatre got this support as a vis-a-vis any other cultural site within the county, the precise reasons.
I think the Borough Theatre requires it. I'm not sure if you've been there or not, Dimitri, but it is in very poor state. You know, the fact that it's not openly accessible, you know, there's health and safety concerns there. It is definitely required.
Okay, thank you. I think you've answered that sufficiently. Thank you, Councillor Dimmock. Councillor Jez Becker, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's full council and we've got to engage in the usual tiresome sniping for points, but this is a good project. We've scrutinised it in economy and development, which if Dimitri was being a little less disingenuous, then he would know that we've asked all these questions already, and we've come to the conclusion that, you know, they've done the best that they can as a team, the people involved on the ground. And, you know, I would applaud the project being taken forward. It needs to happen for the good of the community, despite my funding envy. Obviously, I'd like a similar amount spent on the drill hall. But I think that the important thing here is I would like to recognise in full council the work of Dave Baxter, the new manager, who's brought some real energy to the scheme, and to the volunteers who give up their time to really try and make that venue something worthwhile in the community. So, yeah, your regularly scheduled point scoring resumes.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. And the last question coming forward now is from Councillor Tony Easton before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I fully support the work needed on Abagbeni Borough Theatre. I don't know whether Councillor Woodhouse was there when I was there watching the Beatles and Co. But my comments are really touching on what Dimitri has just said. I'm very concerned that Monmouthshire County Council rightly are finding the need to support Abagbeni Borough Theatre. It does need it. But we've got a theatre society in Caldicot called the Caldicot Musical Theatre Society, who built a small theatre, and last year was summarily evicted by Monmouthshire County Council for no reason. This group has nowhere to go now. So I would like a little bit of equality across the county, and some money that they want to claim back or claw back from Mytel, which is just over the fence from where Lisa lives, to support other groups in the county, particularly the Caldicot Musical Theatre Society. They're looking for a home. They haven't got a home, and I feel that what Monmouthshire County Council did at the time, I tried. It was in Councillor Fox's ward at the time, or still is, sorry. And I think there should be more support generally across. And I seek that Lisa, now in the role she's got, to pick this up and to try and find some way of supporting the Caldicot Musical Theatre Society. They need a home. They've been there since the end of the Second World War, and I think that it's a very good group a very good body for youngsters. There's several of them have gone on to better things in operatics in Bristol and London. So Whilst we're talking about Abagbeni Borough Theatre, which I totally support, it's needed, but we've got to have some equality of chances across the county, and particularly the Caldicot Musical Theatre Society, which needs some financial support and somewhere to live. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Councillor Dimmock, do you want to respond to a couple of those comments before we go to the vote?
Yeah, if I can. I hear you, Tony. I have the pleasure of working with Jo, who was the previous chairwoman of Caldicot Music and Theatrical Society. Hopefully, we may have found them a temporary home using Portstewart Recreational Hall actually at the moment. But I hear what you're saying. Can I just go back to what Dimitri said? He's saying that there's no reasons. Dimitri, the original plans were for a phase project, which did not include the bar area, which we're looking to put a whole new bar area in now. And I did state in my opening statement about some nice to haves that, you know, if we're going to go to the extent of the work we're going to do, we just as well do them now, which would see the increases. During the preparatory works, it became apparent that the original scope of the project fell short of capturing the full need of the work required. You can't just do a superficial facelift. Again, you know, I've spent many hours in the Borough Theatre showing people around and explaining the things that we uncovered. And I'd you know, if you want to take a drive up to Abagbeni, I'll happily show you around the Borough Theatre. There's been lots of problems that the team have encountered, and so it's best to do, you know, an overhaul and, you know, deliver something of quality, which I think this will. So thank you, Chair.
A song coming on then, wasn't there? A song coming on then, wasn't there?
Was there?
A song coming on then.
Oh, right. You don't want to hear me sing. I'm awful.
Okay, thank you very much, members. Thank you. So we'll go to the vote with this. The recommendation is on page 105 in the pack, and the recommendation 2.1 is to support the proposed investment at the Borough Theatre, Abagbeni, whilst acknowledging the current funding shortfall to be met. So that's in the chat bar now, members. Okay, and members, thank you very much. That's overwhelmingly been supported, unanimously been supported. So thank you very much, all. Okay, so we'll move on to notices of motions. 6.1. The first submitted by County Councillor Kevin Williams. This came forward from the last meeting on the 22nd of July. It was withdrawn then. It's now been presented to us again here. Councillor Williams, do you want to take that as written?
Yeah, happy to. Can I speak on it now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay. My interest in this started with the two care leavers that came to full council some time ago now, and I've had a few conversations with some foster carers, and I've also spoken at great length with Penny. I think there's a genuine need to support carers and care leavers, but I think we need to focus on the extra support for those that sort of slip through the net a little bit, and I think it has to become a bit more individual. I'm not saying we don't do this, so this isn't one of those motions that's going to knock everybody and criticise. It's just a genuine attempt to try and get members to be more aware of what goes on and what can we do to help, really. I mean, when I'm long gone after next May, I'd like to leave something behind that people could actually sort of sit down and say, yeah, we can carry on and do this. I think improving access to skills and jobs is quite important, maybe through apprenticeships or Jobs Growth Wales. And of course, financial support. Going back to year before last, with this pandemic, I tend to forget how many years have actually passed now, since it seems like 20. We had talk about a universal basic income, which Mark Drakeford has said that he'd like now to pilot with care leavers. And of course, the Monmouthshire County Council motion on the day was thrown down completely by the administration. I think the leader actually said that he didn't see the point in giving free money to people. So I think we should be a part of anything that provides support, and particularly financial. Looking at the report that we had earlier on, it said that less than 5 have experienced homelessness. I think that's probably 4 too many. If it was 4, 1 is 1 too many. So I think what we can do to try and support them, maybe as councillors, maybe come up with ideas to try and help or get more involved. I don't know. It was just something that occurred to me. Sorry, it's spanned a few meetings, but due to work commitments, I got a little bit waylaid during the early part of the summer with people going back to work from COVID and the furlough schemes sort of dwindling away. So that's the reason why it's been a bit delayed. So that's basically what I want to do. It's not controversial or anything like that. It's just an awareness raising. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to Councillor Tudor Thomas because he's in the chat bar.
I can't.
Twice. Yeah, apologies, Chair. I put my hand up twice. I obviously I want to second this motion by County Councillor Kevin Williams. I'm Vice Chair of Corporate Parenting, and I've been at a number of, I've been at all meetings bar one. I missed one about a week ago due to sort of illness. That's the first meeting I missed on corporate parenting, because it is such an important aspect of work that the authority does. And I've been on a number of care leaver engagement evenings. I was on one with Councillor Penny Jones and the head of Children's Services a couple of weeks ago. You know, care leavers really do need our support. They leave foster care at the age of 18, and really they're catapulted into the wide world. They do have support officers who are excellent, and you know they really do work hard to help them. But really, they're in a more vulnerable position than children in foster care. And in foster care, they've got their foster parents, they've got a social worker. They have additional support, and I'm not saying that that's a pleasant place to be for 1 minute. But for children coming from well-resourced, supportive families, let's be honest, they continue to receive that support, both emotional and financial, well after the age of 18. Care leavers don't have that, and that is a weakness in society, not just in an MCC. And certainly, care leavers are not in this fortunate position. I do think that we need to perhaps think a bit more in terms of further care that we can offer to care leavers, and I know that's going to be quite difficult. Housing, particularly suitable housing, is a major issue, and Kevin referred to some people becoming homeless. Somebody recently spoke about this, how he'd sort of sofa surfed for a couple of weeks and then ended up in a hostel, which wasn't brilliant. Now he's in a flat, fortunately. I think, as an authority across all the party spectrum, we need to think about that. Suitable housing is a vital part of the support that we can offer. I know we've given help when they came in with sort of leisure passes and things like being offered an opportunity to go on a shortlist if they've applied for a job. That is all helpful, but let's be honest, these youngsters are in a tough corner, and I think cross-party we need to perhaps think of how we can improve their lot so that they don't end up homeless, they don't end up going into prison. If you look at the figures in England, so many people who are in prison started their lives in the care system. And that's not an indictment on the care system, but it's the harsh reality. So I fully endorse that motion. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Penny Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. My computer is playing up at the moment, so I hope I don't crash in the middle of this. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Kevin Williams for bringing this motion to Council to help inform all members, all of whom have a special responsibility as corporate parents, to safeguard and promote the welfare of all those in our care until the age of 25. So I hope what I'm about to say will reassure him and members of what is done in Monmouthshire and what the staff think about it. So Councillor Williams has brought this motion in the context of support post 18, and through the current corporate parenting strategy, one of our main priorities is to support all care leavers in education, training and employment right through to 25. We work under the legislative framework relevant to care leavers, predominantly the Care Leavers Wales Regulations 2015 and the Social Services Wellbeing Wales Act. The care leavers have 2 personal advisors, well 3 actually now, sorry, who support and advise them in every aspect that requires support, and in fact they go above and beyond their remit, ensuring that no one is left worried and concerned. A personal assistant will stay involved with a young person until 25 years, but will re-engage at any point. They help with their finances, benefits, housing, in line with the housing support officer who attends our meeting, helps them to attain independent living skills, access to training and employment alongside youth enterprise, also involved in the panel, and most importantly, ensure they're not alone and isolated. And that includes special occasions such as Christmas Day. They go above and beyond their remit. So 16 and 17-year-olds who have left care are paid by Monmouthshire the equivalent of benefits as they cannot claim until they are 18 years old. Universal credit of £58 a week is paid as standard, and if in college or education generally, they have access to EMAs and student loans or grants. But, and this is what the staff want to emphasise above all, we know that 1 is too many, but it has to be stressed that and this was in large black letters, very few care leavers are not in education or employment. The pride is that everybody who goes through the hands of the personal assistants have achieved something and, you know, up to their standards. Now, 1 is too many that slips through the net. I totally agree. But sometimes, you know, we can't be successful with all of them. Doesn't mean to say we don't keep trying. But they're very proud of the success of the ones in their care. Where possible, St David's Fund is access to provide additional help alongside their benefits. And this is for specific reasons such as driving lessons, which are incredibly expensive, or educational equipment resources, laptops, top-ups for mobiles, reducing hardship due to the impact of COVID, and one-off requests in relation to particular leisure, study, or work-related endeavours. Where possible, the corporate parenting panel shapes what can be done locally, as mentioned already, leisure passes, trips, etc. As a matter of interest, and already mentioned, the panel held a young care leavers event at the beginning of September that Tudor was present at, as was Lisa. The care leavers gave us feedback alongside their advisors, Deb and Mike, with no holds barred. And this proved to be very informative, as it always is with them, and have followed a lively debate. As a result of a previous meeting, there are stronger links with local authority housing departments regarding choices for supported lodgings, etc. And Jane Oates, housing officer, joined our panel, which has proved to be a very positive move. Training and employment were discussed. So Monmouthshire is now providing internal apprenticeship schemes with job opportunities, and there is representation from the Youth Enterprise Scheme on CPP, as there is Kickstart and other schemes. There were also suggestions that training for foster carers was required to help prepare care leavers to live independently by teaching them independent living skills. This is done by parents naturally, usually when children or young people, go off to university. They leave education and they're taught or advised how to cook, how to prepare themselves for independent living. And this what the care leavers in particular feel, and this is being passed on, that in foster carer training, they too should be trained in how to help the young people in their care going forward. On a positive note, finally, also the care leavers, as always, expressed a wish to be listened to and respected, as is their right. And we invite representatives on the group of the CPP, and we really, admire and welcome their views. On a positive note, they stated that they got a lot of support, which was appreciated, especially by the personal advisors. I hope this reply goes some way to addressing Councillor Williams's motion, and I'm happy to discuss this topic further at any time. But I would say that I would thank the staff in particular who look after them, the personal assistants. They really do work above and beyond their call of duty. So with their help and guidance, these young people have proved to be very successful. And one thing, did I actually say, I don't recall if I did say or not, but Richard Austin, who's the inclusion officer, has said how pleased they are with the progress that the young people, children who are looked after, have made recently. They've successfully, I think except for one. Can I just check that? Hang on a minute. We're really pleased with the positive outcomes this year. All children who looked after pupils achieved recognised qualifications. All. Now that is an outstanding achievement and shows how much that all our staff do to help these young people. Again, we can never do enough, so it's an ongoing process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor Dimitri Vitruni.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank Councillor Kevin Williams for bringing this important subject to Council, and actually the Cabinet Member Penny Jones for her considerate reply. It's refreshing to have a Cabinet Member with such replies and on top of the facts for once. I wish to make an amendment, Chair, which should be put in the chat box now. I'm assuming Mr. Phillips. If not, I will do it myself. I will refrain from speaking until that is done, so I can speak to the motion that's highlighted. So it's hard to determine what has been added, but the added bit is after the sentence beginning therefore. And the Welsh Government has announced that it will pilot, or looking to pilot, universal basic income that will focus on care leavers to see its effect on the life chances of said care leavers. As Councillor Penny Jones has rightly highlighted, there's a lot of support. The advisors have been great, or the staff have been great, but what they need is a game changer, not the piecemeal kind of attempts to change or turn around lives in a meaningful way that we've seen over not just Conservative governments, but Labour governments as well. And we have an opportunity now to help benefit Monmouthshire care leavers in relation to UBI in this pilot. Now, the time I raised a motion, it was on UBI generally, and the Conservative administration dismissed the idea on spurious grounds. I suspect they've never read anything on it or understand all the research behind it. Nevertheless, they dismissed it. But here's an opportunity to remedy their wrong and ensure that Monmouthshire care leavers do not lose out on any pilot that comes forward by the Welsh Government. Why should care leavers and other local authorities get this money or get this support, and Monmouthshire ones left out because the Conservative administration just are hostile to any notion? I think that's wrong. I think Monmouthshire and Monmouthshire care leavers should be part of that pilot, should receive or be in the mix to receive such pilot and such monies. And that is the amendment, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vitruni. Do you have a seconder for your amendment? Okay, don't need a seconder, I'm told. So first, we'll go to the vote now.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to the vote now.
There's a raise hand function first in case anyone wants to discuss the amendment.
Okay. So if members wish to discuss the amendment, there's a raise hand function in the chat bar now. Okay, Councillor Penny Jones.
Sorry, I for one would be very unhappy to support this because I don't know enough about it, and I have regular meetings with Julie Morgan and all other cabinet members. We had one this week, Network Across Wales. So I don't know enough about it. A pilot can be successful or it can be a failure. So it doesn't mean it's the panacea for all evils. So on that grounds, I would like to know much more about it. Why isn't it more? I know Dimitri knows a lot about it, but in my meetings, it has certainly not been discussed in any depth whatsoever, and I've heard no other authorities talking about it. I'm quite happy to be open to it in the future, but at this time, I personally would be unhappy to vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Tudor-Thomas.
Yes, okay, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to come in and say, yeah, I do support it. You know, I think the figure of something like £58 a week was mentioned earlier on. I know probably housing is paid before that, but you know, one of the big problems that care leavers have is that they don't have the bank of mummy and daddy to fall back on. And, you know, in reality, very small amounts of money quickly put care leavers possibly into debt. And at the end of the day, financial worries are a huge problem for any youngster. And for councillors here like me, who've, you know, I've got 3 grown-up sons, but when they went to university, etc., yes, they were looking for some financial support from myself and my wife. And I just feel that anything that we can do to actually help their income to go up. And to be fair to these care leavers, most of them, the vast majority are working. They make big efforts to find work, and they are helped by the support officers. But having a basic income so that they've got a security, I think is a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Penny-Jones, your camera and audio is still on. Councillor Martin Groker.
Thank you, Chair. The reason put forward by Councillor Penny-Jones for not accepting this amendment is, to be honest, one of the weakest I've ever heard. The Welsh Government are proposing a pilot. They will prepare any part of any organisation that agrees to take part in that pilot. And we, as one of the few Conservative administrations in Wales, I would have thought would provide a very good almost counterweight to some of the more radical and progressive authorities that exist around the country. So let's go for this. Let's put ourselves forward as a Conservative administration, hopefully not for much longer, but let's see if that Welsh Government pilot goes ahead, we can play our part in this county.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. We have no members and no other questions on that, so we can go to the vote now, whether to accept. Sorry, Councillor Pratt, I've just seen yours come up now, so we'll go to Councillor Pratt first, and then we'll go to the vote afterwards. Councillor Jane Pratt.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say that I find the comments made by Councillor Batruni and Councillor Grocott to be offensive and particularly unnecessary. And, you know, anything that is has to be considered, it has to be properly scrutinised. We're talking about, you know, supporting people, which I fully support, but we absolutely need to see the detail. And a few details in the chat box on the back of a fag packet, quite frankly, don't cut it with me.
Can I just
so
ask
I'm afraid, excuse me, Councillor Batruni, I am speaking.
It's a point of clarification.
I cannot support.
Let me pause you both there, please, if I may. Okay, so Councillor Batruni is within his rights if there's a point of personal clarification, I think. So
personal clarification. I just want to be clear, or for Councillor Pratt to be clear, what's offensive by what Councillor Margaret Kruger has said to and what I've said.
That's not personal clarification. So and I've got that from the monitoring officer. So Councillor Jane Pratt, please continue.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So for those reasons, I cannot support Councillor Batruni's amendment. I will be supporting the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pratt. That's now in the chat bar, members, to vote, and this is to vote for Councillor Batruni's amendment to Councillor Williams's motion. Okay, so that amendment has been defeated, members. which means we now go back to the original motion as put by Councillor Kevin Williams. Okay, and then I believe Councillor Watts, you wanted to ask something further on the original motion?
No, Chair, you missed me on the previous one. You just ignored it. It was in the box. I thought maybe there's some technical error, but there always is, isn't there, Chair? So forget about it. Thank you.
Councillor Watts, what I will say is that earlier on we noticed that you was putting your hand up in the wrong box. So if you go scroll up to your in your chat bar function, you'll note that you've put your hand up 3 times in the officer annual report box, whilst he was actually talking about something very different.
That's really, Chair, if I may, just for kind of clarity, I appreciate you spotting that.
Yeah, so
I appreciate. Can I just finish my sentence, Chair? You know, it is a democracy. Is that the reason I couldn't scroll up, because it had frozen, and this is the problem I had before. This is if you provide me the third-hand equipment, right? What do you expect? This junk.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Watts, for your comments. Thank you. Okay, with that, then we can Councillor Kevin Williams. Do you want to come back and with any comments before we go to the vote?
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair, if I may. Thanks to Councillor Penny Jones for giving me some time to discuss it with her, go through it. Thanks to members for listening. I'm not surprised that the amendment was voted down. I'm quite sad that it was, actually, because it would have been an ideal chance to be part of a pilot that would have given our care leavers some money, but hey ho, that's not to be. So happy to go to the vote, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so members, that will now come into the chat bar to be voted on, please. Okay, thank you very much, members. That motion is carried, which allows us to move on to the next motion, 6.2. Submitted by Councillor Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services. Councillor Pratt, are you happy to take that as read before you speak to the motion?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Very happy.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then it's over to you to present.
Thank you very much, Chair. And whilst I, as Cabinet Member, and our officers are working very hard to forward these projects that are listed here, which make up the substance of the motion, the provision of a railway station at Mega, a link which links up the M48 with a new junction to service 7 Tunnel Junction, and to make public transport links and hubs for buses, trains, cyclists and cars at our railway stations a priority. I'm afraid we've seen very little action, and this is really of great concern to us, and we really need to get the infrastructure in place if we're going to help our residents use their local stations and use public transport and use cycles and buses and make sustainable choices. We need to put this infrastructure in place, and this will help alleviate our roads, because we've got really severe pressure, especially in the south of our county, which we're all very aware of. Now, the decision was made by the First Minister to scrap the M4 Relief Road back in 2019, 2 years ago now, and the Burns Commission report came out over a year ago, and yet we've seen very little has happened since. So I really do hope that this motion will receive cross-party support, as we all signed up to our climate emergency back in 2019, and all these important infrastructure projects are going to help us to move towards achieving that aim. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Richard John.
Thank you very much. Well, can I second this motion from Jane Pratt and endorse everything she's said. It's been a source of real frustration for us, you know, that plans for the M4 Relief Road were drawn up 30 years ago initially, before they were passed to the Welsh Assembly Government in 1999. And after 2 decades of dithering and congestion and air pollution deteriorated, the Welsh Government decided to scrap the project in 2019, despite having spent over £100 million on it in the previous 5 years alone. No, I accept the Welsh Government's decision. I accept the rejection, I suppose, of the M4 Relief Road by voters in the Newport area in successive elections. But ministers were very clear that the money earmarked for the M4 Relief Road, over £1 billion, would now be ploughed into public transport and minor road schemes to ease congestion along the M4. And as Jane said, over 2 years since that decision was made, and we haven't really seen any progress, and congestion on the M4 is as bad as ever. So we're willing to work with Welsh Government on a wide range of schemes in southern Monmouthshire, which we believe will make our communities safer, our highways less congested, make our communities cleaner. And I think road safety for motorists, cyclists and pedestrians alike is absolutely critical. But we need to see some really urgent progress on the Burns agenda. We recognise the transition from relying on the car to using more sustainable forms of travel like train, bus, cycling and walking is a massive challenge, but it is critical to meeting our climate change obligations. But as Jane said, Mega Walkway Station could be a really quick win for the Welsh Government and offering a viable public transport alternative. As part of our levelling up bid for Caldecott, we're seeking improved active travel routes between Severn Tunnel Junction and Caldecott Town Centre. But we need the South Wales Main Line to do more of the heavy lifting away from the M4, but also to help reduce traffic on the B4245. As we see more people commuting from Bristol into Wales, we want to make it easier for people to park up at Severn Tunnel Junction and take the train for the rest of their journey. So there are lots of quick wins we could achieve there by working with Welsh Government, but we really do need to see some action now. Some additional connectivity to Severn Tunnel Junction could relieve a lot of that pressure. So I'm really grateful to Jane for bringing this really timely motion forward today, because we stand ready and willing to work with Welsh Government on these exciting proposals, which we feel could make a real difference to the life chances of people, the air pollution in our communities, reduce congestion, and make some of these public transport routes far more sustainable and generally improve the quality of life for people in southern Monmouthshire. So we stand ready to work with Welsh Government here.
Thank you very much, Councillor John. Councillor Petruni.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to amend this as well, Chair. I believe Mr. Phillips will put in the bar. And to say, I found Councillor Pratt's comments offensive. And I'm just generally miserable and unfair categorisation of what's happening. But I'm really pleased to hear Richard John saying he's willing to work with the Welsh Government, which would be a first. And my amendment, hopefully then, will be welcomed by Councillor John, at least, if not Councillor Pratt, because it is absolutely about Welsh Government working with all stakeholders and interested parties to accelerate. Yes, we need to accelerate Mega. Totally agree with that. It is an emergency. There is need for urgency. And it strikes me that the Conservative administration says this about climate change on one hand, talk about urgency and so forth, but then opposes any moratorium on building new roads. So it's for public transport, for more cycle routes, which we're all for. Everyone's for that. But when it comes to the hard decisions, Councillor John can't do it. Councillor Pratt probably doesn't understand and can't do it. So I'm helping them. Here we go. Work with the Welsh Government. Yes, it needs to be accelerated. Yes, we support Mega Railway Station. Yes, we want people out of their cars and into public transport and other forms of transport. And we need to back the Welsh Government equally. It's not a one-way street when they make the difficult decisions about no more road building, because you have more roads, you get more cars. That's the argument. Now, I've been on record skeptical of that, but nonetheless, that is the policy call. That's what the climate change activists talk about. That's what they've been calling for years. And now the Monmouthshire Conservative administration have the ability to back their words with actual action rather than the fluff what we just heard from Councillor John or Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Councillor Dimitri Petruni. So we will now go to a raise hand function to discuss the amendment. Okay, Councillor Pratt.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And whilst I may have left school at 16 and I did not have the benefit of a university academic education like Councillor Batruni, I would like to make him quite clear that I do understand my portfolio. I cannot support his amendment because one of the things that we would have to do in order to provide a fast bus road from the M48 to Seven Tunnel Junction would involve building a road. So on that basis, and that would be in order to alleviate the heavy traffic on the M4 and to also make it quicker for people to get to Seven Tunnel Junction. So on that basis alone, I cannot support.
Point of clarification, we're talking about mega, aren't we?
And I suggest
are we not talking about mega?
As soon as people have spoken, I do feel that his.
This is off subject.
I do
Tunnel,
feel
we're talking about
that
mega
his-
railway station. aren't we?
Councillor Batruni, can you please stop? This is the second time you've done this now. Can you stop butting in when other members are speaking, please? Thank you.
I understand that Councillor Batruni may not understand the intricacies of this particular project and the fact that one of the proposals by the Burns Commission was to build a road that would link up the M48 with Seven Tunnel Junction. So maybe that's something that he needs to read up on. The other thing is I do feel that his amendment really takes away focus from the substance of mine, and on that basis I cannot support it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pratt. Councillor Armand-Watts.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Sorry, there's a slight delay. I apologise if I just morph into a freeze. I think it's a bit, to begin with, I'd like to support Dimitri in his amendment there. I think it's a little bit unfair, really, to bring up people's academic achievements. If I might say so, Chair, Dimitri's written a fantastic book. I recommend it to Jane. It is a little bit long and it is a little bit expensive. No doubt he's on some fairly good commission for that. But I also think, and I don't want to be unnecessarily critical and helpful, but for Jane to be overly critical about Welsh Government throughout the pandemic, when frankly, when she's imposed obviously the shutdown at the High Street, and then I remember she came to the Town Council in March and promised that there would be consultation with business. And at this point, I should declare a non-prejudicial interest as a local business. That has not.
Just respectively, if I may, is this speaking to the motion or is this?
Yes, it is really. I'm trying to give it context, Chair, and this is slightly more, I know you struggle with this, a nuanced argument really, is that what I'm trying to say is that it's quite rich of her when she can't actually then keep an eye on her own backyard when it comes to then following up on things she said she's going to do. You've got officers, they're effectively gone AWOL sometimes. So I'm happy to support Dimitri's suggestion. I'm disappointed with Jane. Come back, Brian, all is forgiven. Thank you, Chair.
Members, what I would say is if we can try and leave personal sniping out of the discussion, because I don't think it adds anything to the discussion at all. It doesn't put us in a great light, in all honesty. So if we can leave those personal comments aside and concentrate on the work that's before us, I think that would be appreciated by everyone as well as the public. So Councillor Richard John, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I have to say I would like to endorse the comments you've just made. I do think the comments from Councillor Batruni earlier on were extremely rude when he interrupted and talked over Councillor Pratt on 2 separate occasions. Just completely talked over her and was really rude. We've got a duty to the public in these debates. We're talking about some really important issues here, and I recognise there are strong opinions on either side of the argument, but you're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman. And to respond directly to Councillor Batruni, there are many occasions when we've worked closely with Welsh Government, particularly through the pandemic, on grants to businesses. One of the areas that's been really successful in the last few years has been our work with Welsh Government on the 21st Century Schools programme and the schools there in Monmouth and Caldecott, and we look forward to continuing to work with Welsh Government in many future projects. But in terms of this amendment. I agree absolutely with what Councillor Jane Pratt has said, that I have to say I don't object to the first bit of your amendment. Continue to work with all interested parties. We're very happy to work with anyone and everyone to improve services in our county. But I'm afraid the second part of your amendment, which approves of the Welsh Government's block on road building, there are a number of schemes that Jane has mentioned that would be really valuable, that could actually improve air quality in the south of the county, and could actually make it easier for people to access those public transport hubs, which will require small amounts of road building. And of course, one of the road building projects we're particularly keen on, which will have a massive benefit to people who live in Chepstow, is the Chepstow bypass. It's something we're absolutely committed to working with both Welsh and UK governments on, as well as a wide range of other partners. So on that basis, as Jane has quite rightly said, we can't support this amendment and we'll be voting it down.
Thank you very much. Councillor Louise Brown, please.
Yes, I'm just saying that I can't support this amendment because basically, if you speak to anybody in Chepstow, everybody agrees. As far as I've never heard anybody say, no, we don't need a bypass in Chepstow. And this amendment says that there's no road building. It comes up in conversation after conversation of how blocked people have become because of the fact that there's only one road in and out of Chepstow. And obviously, because the tolls have gone, we are desperately in need of a bypass. And we have the worst air quality in Wales on the Hardwick Hill, and it's worse than Bristol. And so to suggest that we don't need any road building for members who represent Chepstow area, I am absolutely flabbergasted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Easton, you'd like to make a point of order?
Yes, I would have. I was going to say stick to the agenda. It's finished now, so I'll leave it like that, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'll leave it at that rather than going back over it. Okay, so now we'll go to the vote on the motion, on the amendment, please. Okay, so that motion has been defeated, and so, sorry, I beg your pardon, the amendment was defeated, and so we go back to the original motion. Let's see if there's any more. So Councillor Lisa Dimmock.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Councillor Pratt for bringing this motion forward and especially highlighting Mega Station. Like the leader said, it's definitely a quick fix for Welsh Government. Even the Burns Committee of Burns South Wales Transport Commission has strongly supported Mega Station, and it would also see a decrease in traffic on the B4245, which many of us Sevenside members would welcome. So thank you, Councillor Pratt. I will be supporting this one.
Thank you, Councillor Dimmock. Councillor Roger Harris, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Pratt says, or was it Councillor John? I'm not quite sure. One of the two about us not being political. We're obviously going to be political. We're the opposition, and you, as the ruling authority, are basically criticising the Welsh Government that has fought its way through the pandemic. Recently had an election where we were superbly successful and got half the seats. And in the council chamber, we have got 1/30 of the Senate sitting there. And you're trying to tell me that they've got absolutely no authority. 2 out of 60 of county councillors in the chamber are also Senate members. What's wrong with them, basically? You know, it's supporting, sorry, not supporting, having arguments against the Welsh Government the whole time, which is Councillor Pratt's favourite occupation, regardless of any sense. And she wonders why we as the opposition get upset about it. It's just don't do it. You say you're going to support and do support the Welsh Government, and then just don't come up with crazy time-wasting motions like this when there's more important things to be considered. As simple as that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Okay, Councillor Joe Watkins, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would just like to state that I fully support the motion put forward today. I do believe that we are in a climate emergency, and therefore every possible move that we can make towards reducing carbon emissions needs to be taken, and it needs to be taken swiftly. We cannot keep waiting and waiting for the right time to do things. The Burns report has been published. I think it should be implemented, and it should be implemented quickly. I'm not going to go into any of the details. I've been quite upset by the tone that this meeting has taken at various points. But please, everyone, let's stay civil and let's focus on what we can do for the good of the people of Monmouthshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins, and echoes my sentiment superbly. So we will move to the vote now on the motion as put by Jane Pratt. Unless Jane, do you want to come up with any further comments?
No, I just to say that can I thank Councillor Watkins for her comments, which were very timely, and I hope that the Labour group will listen to them. And I make no apologies for criticising the Labour government in Cardiff Bay, and I will continue to do the very best I can to improve the infrastructure. And I'm very pleased to see that the central government in Westminster, the Conservative government, are in fact putting together a £22 billion amount of money in the UK Infrastructure Bank, and I look forward to us being able to bid for that money as well. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. And members, you'll see that that is already in the chat bar, and some members have already voted, but there are some members that haven't voted as yet. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much, members. Thank you all. Just in light of the comments that have just been picked up by some other members and the comments made by me, I think it would be appropriate now just to take a 10-minute recess, and maybe members could just reflect on their performance over the last duration. So we shall meet back here at 10 to 5. Thank you, members. Okay, members. We'll just wait for the confirmation that we're live recording again.
Yes, Chair, it's live.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you all. Thank you for returning. We're at 6.3 in the agenda, submitted by County Councillor Dimitri Petruni. Councillor Petruni, are you happy to take that as written?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. And do you want to present to that motion?
Just briefly, Chair. Many years ago now, it feels like many years ago, 2-3 years ago, a neighbouring local authority questioned the viability and effectiveness of a service called Sencom. That service, which I visited myself at the time, provides, in my view, critical services to children with hearing and sight impairments. During that course of that campaign, against any sort of cuts, we, and I say we, there was a number of us, including some family members, developed relationships and connections. During the subsequent years, I've been informed of certain families who have newborns with sight or hearing impairments, but particularly on hearing, parents who haven't got the financial means by which to learn or go on official courses to learn sign language. I was informed that there was at present no public funding, happy to be corrected on that, but that is what I was informed, and that Gwent authorities should do more, which I agree with if that is the current situation, to fund or at least partially fund or have a pot to fund families or parents in particular to at least get basic level sign language if they don't have the means by which to get official courses. And it's as simple as that. This motion, unusually for me, is just very simple, straight to the point. There's no other request or side view. This is as it says on the tin, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Petruni. Councillor Martin Grocott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second this motion, and in doing so, say that I vividly remember many years ago now, when I was an A-level teacher, marking a piece of work that had been written by a student who was 17 years old, who had a sister who was profoundly deaf, and the problems that the family faced as a result. Her mom and her dad had in the basic communication with their sibling, and that was such a moving piece of work. It remains with me to this day. In the good old days when I was on the other side of the fence and a senior officer in the education department in Gwent, we set up the hearing impaired service, and I wrote that report. And I'm sure that at that point we did provide support in learning British Sign Language for parents of profoundly deaf children. I think it's almost a bit of basic humanity, because that is the way in which profoundly deaf people in this country communicate. And to deprive them of that ability to speak in their language within their family is quite cruel. So I know it's an additional thing that may fall onto the service here, but I think out of common humanity, it helps families communicate, and that is a basic requirement and a basic right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott. Councillor Paul Pavia.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Can I thank the Leader of the Opposition Group for bringing forward this motion for debate today. It really is a very timely given that September is Deaf Awareness Month and today, the 23rd, is International Day of Sign Languages. This month in particular is about promoting positive aspects of deafness, encouraging social inclusion and raising awareness of those organisations that support the deaf and deaf families like SENCOM. And I think that's really important for people to understand that there is a deaf community in Wales and in the UK, and there is deaf culture. So for those deaf people who choose to use BSL as their first language, it's akin to those first language Welsh speakers who want to communicate through that medium. So that's really important to understand and a critical component of this debate. I've been really fortunate in my professional career outside of the council to work with some brilliant people whose work has delivered significant life-changing benefits. I currently provide professional public affairs advice to the Deafness, Cognition and Language Research Centre at the University College London. These talented academics, a multidisciplinary team of linguistics, psychologists, neuroscientists, and many of whom are deaf themselves, examine language, cognition and the brain from unique perspectives of deafness and deaf communication. It's the largest research centre of its kind in Europe, and this group of academic scientists have written the playbook, not just in terms of clinical diagnostic guidance to identify the range of hearing impairments for babies and younger children, but also the substantial research that has demonstrated how important parental communication is with developing a deaf child's longer-term cognitive and linguistic skills. A key piece of research undertaken by Professor Kirsty Cormier, who's the current director of the deputy director, sorry, of the research centre, along with David Vincent back in 2012, showed that to give deaf children the best chance of successful language acquisition, it's important that they're exposed to a sign language from a very, very young age. And the evidence they collated shows it's not appropriate to wait until a child has succeeded or failed at acquiring spoken language before introducing a sign language, because at that time it may be too late for any successful language acquisition to take place. This research has implications for how parents of deaf children are supported to ensure that their children have a bilingual start to life. And this is particularly important as 90 to 95% of deaf children are born to hearing parents who have little or no experience of deafness or sign language. Learning that your child is deaf can be a really emotional and confusing time for parents and for carers of deaf children. Some of those children may choose to learn BSL as their main form of communication later on in life. So for family members to be able to communicate effectively with them, they need to be able to learn and use BSL themselves to avoid any form of child isolation or potentially any mental or physical harm that may flow from that isolation. So what are the current options? Now, there are basic non-accredited courses and resources out there for parents to initially get them on the ladder to help them start to learn BSL as a second language. And while SENCOM doesn't deliver those courses for parents, it signposts and advises parents on how to access those courses. And they're often delivered in the first instance through charities like the National Deaf Children's Society, who have developed a family sign language curriculum. But those courses are really popular and there's often a long waiting list. They also sign parents who may want a more in-depth understanding and attain a more enhanced practical provision of the language to an accredited tutor-led course. But those courses are not free, as Councillor Petruni has highlighted. If you want to progress through all 4 levels of BSL language attainment, you're looking at about £3,500 per person. So for both parents, there is a substantial barrier in its own right, not to mention any additional costs around childcare to help parents facilitate that learning. So what can we do to resolve this matter? Well, there are a number of approaches, I think. As members will be aware, the Welsh Government, to its credit, was ensured that Wales was the first country in the United Kingdom to make the United Nations Convention on Rights of the Child as part of its domestic law. The UNCRC provides for supporting families with deaf children to learn sign language as a right of children with disabilities, and so that parents and siblings can communicate with their family members with disabilities. That's there, that the Welsh Government committed themselves to that. However, at the moment, the Welsh Government does not currently have a policy for providing post-19 BSL learning to support those parents. There is money available to local authorities to fund courses through adult and community learning provision, which are delivered through various partnerships across the region and across Wales. but those providers are expected to identify and address the needs of their local communities, and in doing so, prioritise key areas of national importance. And the Welsh Government have highlighted those things as essential skills to help people access work opportunities and employment, digital skills, employability skills, Welsh language, Welsh medium provision for older learners to socially engage. So there's only a few areas, I think, in Wales where BSL effectively is classed as an essential or an employability skill, meaning that most of the time it falls outside of the current Welsh Government priorities. So I certainly think that's an area we could look at with our regional authority partners and College Gwent to see if this is something we can designate within the region. And I think I'd be more than happy to have a discussion with Councillor Batruni and Roger Thirlbeck, who heads up the CENCOM team in Torfaen. I think that's a really sensible starting point, because I understand there is some issue around capacity and demand that we would need to understand, because my understanding is that there's a lack of appropriate qualified tutors with level 3 and 4 qualifications. So if we're looking at the basic accreditation, I think that's okay, but to progress into 3 and 4 does become more challenging. In terms of funding, it's my understanding that around half of all adult BSL courses are fully funded by Welsh Government, and 40% are partly funded by Welsh Government, leaving only a small percentage that are not funded. There have been some cuts over recent years, and which has reduced the volume of BSL provision, which is fully and partly funded by Welsh Government. But there's a slight misnomer here that the funding provided by Welsh Government doesn't actually cover all the full costs of BSL provision, it only subsidises it. So I think we could look at lobbying Welsh Government via our Senate representatives to see if we can get that level of funding reviewed, and to actually push to get those places fully funded for parents and carers. I think there's also a possibility to bid for Welsh Government funding within the region for a pilot project to see if we can increase the number of parental learners in Gwent. I know there are a number of models out there. I'm just thinking the ICE SIGN programme in England, which could be replicated here on a regional basis in the interim. And we wouldn't be asking for a huge amount of money, a few £100,000 over 3 years. You know, we're looking at small numbers, not millions of pounds. Again, I think this is something we could develop with CENCOM. But I think in the medium to longer term, the challenge for me is bridging the national policy gap. You know, as I mentioned earlier on, the Welsh Government has signed up to the UNCRC, and there's a commitment to support parents and carers wanting to learn BSL. But something the Children's Commissioner highlighted in 2017 was, while the Welsh Government recognises BSL as a language in its own right, there is insufficient resource available to ensure that family members can learn to use BSL. However, for me, recognising a language is different to having its legal status enshrined in law, as we have with the Welsh language, because there's specific legal duties on public bodies to deliver services in that language, and more importantly, a certain level of national resource to encourage language take-up. We need the same status for BSL in Wales as they have done in Scotland, where the Scottish Parliament passed the BSL Scotland Act back in 2015. My colleague in the Senedd, Mark Isherwood, Conservative member for North Wales, deaf himself, has been trying to introduce legislation to achieve this, and the closest he's got was a debate on the principle of bringing forward legislation back in February this year, which did have cross-party backing. It was unanimous backing for that debate. So I think he just needs to win that private member's ballot, or try and persuade the Welsh Government to bring forward legislation in its own right. And I think this will make a significant difference, in my view, because the approach the Scottish Government have taken with implementing the Scottish Get It Right for Every Child approach, supported by £2 million of inclusion funding, is that it legally entitles parents to have access to BSL training, which is really, really significant. To be fair to the Welsh Government, it's bringing forward a BSL GCSE within the new Welsh curriculum, which will be rolled out from next year. However, while this will raise awareness of deaf community and deaf culture, and it will give pupils some early understanding of BSL as a second language, it's very different to achieving skilled language proficiency. But it will hopefully spark an interest in achieving those skills over the long term, which will be certainly a societal good. So to conclude, Chair, I'm sure we can find consensus on this issue, as we did regarding the long-term future of CENCOM back in December 2018, and I know Councillor Bertuni was certainly instrumental in lobbying his party colleagues in Newport to change their mind on that. I'm the members of the chamber are really pleased that they did do that. So it's essentially how we as a council, as an authority, can add additional value to that regional partnership. I think we can do that. But just again, I'd like to thank Councillor Bertuni for bringing forward this motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pavia. Councillor Linda Guppy.
Thank you, Chair. Although I do motion, I just think it's a little bit narrow-minded because in Monmouthshire, particularly in the Acorn project and the Flying Start project, we have a brilliant speech and language team and practitioners and all the Flying Start play groups who also share their language skills and training to most of the private nursery sector in Monmouthshire who have development, and most of those practitioners are trained in a simple form of sign language, and definitely that this sign language is being used on a day-to-day basis with the practitioners and with all the children in the Flying Start areas and anybody else that's being referred in through the outreach project that are receiving Flying Start services as well. But I just think you sort of need not to sort of go so narrow fielded, because maybe British Sign Language is not the first choice for every child, and it might be Makaton. So I think we just need to look outside the box a little bit of what is required and what is required for child. And I'm very surprised that the cabinet member for children hasn't brought you up on this. You know, it appears to be that, and maybe I have to declare a personal interest because I work for the Flying Start project under the Nair and Bevan, but there is a lot going on that it seems to be that some cabinet members are not aware of. So just a point of comment, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Guppy. There's no more questions, so Councillor Bertuni, did you want to come back before we go to the vote?
Just briefly, Chair. Just to say, Councillor Guppy, thank you for your insight and your experience. This motion was led by parents, but I'm sure I listened to Councillor Pavia's invitation to have a meeting with the head of CENCOM. We can discuss other alternatives. I don't think necessarily Councillor Pavia or I are trying to limit this, but maybe just listen to parents and what they would like and what we're capable of doing. And just to say to Councillor Pavia, you don't need to thank me for taking on CENCOM. It's very personal to me. My sister was deaf and had profound other learning difficulties, so I don't care what political party it is. I will oppose all cuts. So no need to thank, but thank me for that. But what I would say is to thank the cabinet member for his for clearly being on top of his brief, for being articulate, for being engaging, and I really respect that a lot, and I welcome his warm words, and I'm happy to accept working with him to get this or to see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. We'll go to the vote now with this. That should come up in your chat bar now. Excellent. That motion is carried, everyone. Thank you very much. So that allows us then to move on to members' questions at 7 in the agenda. At 7.1 from County Councillor Tony Easton to County Councillor Paul Pavia, Cabinet Member for Education. Tony, are you happy to take that as written?
Yes, but just one little comment. I understand there's been a flurry of emails going to schools this week, which sort of substantiates the reason why you brought this question to Council. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Paul Pavia.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can I thank Councillor Easton for the question? Monmouthshire is the only authority in Gwent that requires all its school governors to have a DBS check. We do this because it's part of our volunteering policy. be absolutely right. We were looking just to absolutely clarify numbers this week, and just to ensure how many governors that we've got in post at the minute. So at the moment we've got 450 governors in post. We've got 53 vacancies. So if there's no councillors that are not governors, please do think about it. We need to fill those 53 vacancies. And as a census point of this week, we've got 370, which is 82%, that have a current DBS check. We have a further 11% who have their DBS application in process, which means there's 4% currently without a DBS, and we're working with those individual schools concerned to understand this figure and why that those DBS checks are outstanding. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Can we come back a little brief then? Yes, thank you, Councillor Pavier. I find that as a consequence of moving from time-limited CRB checks to open-ended DBS checks, is the system still fit for purpose? Which raises the question to me is seeking to ascertain who is responsible for maintaining and monitoring the system. Is it the governors individually? Is it the schools? Is it the LA, or is the AS? Because it doesn't seem to me to be a central group or body which is now responsible for, or should be responsible for, making sure that it is being followed. Whereas when we had CRB checks, there was a system in place that people got reminded. Thank you. Perhaps you can answer that in another way some other time.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to provide a written response to that. My understanding is it's the schools initially. Schools' responsibility. They're obviously supported by EAS to achieve that, and obviously we're passed on then that information. But I'll certainly clarify that for you, Councillor Eason, and I'm more than happy to put it in writing.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, both. And 7.2 from County Councillor Tony Eason to County Councillor Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services. Councillor Eason, are you happy to take that as written?
As written, Chair. As written.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jane Pratt.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you very much, Councillor Eason, for bringing this question to me. And it's nice to finish on something that we can actually look forward to next year. So the matter of Platinum Jubilee celebrations was discussed at Monmouthshire's Event Safety Advisory Group on the 2nd of September, and the extended bank holiday commences on the 2nd of June next year, when no doubt many of our residents will want to celebrate the occasion of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's accession to the throne 70 years ago. So the most likely date for street parties, we think, will be Sunday the 5th of June, when big Jubilee lunches are being promoted nationally. So I quite agree with you, Councillor Eason. Earlier preparations would be encouraged, and to this end, previous advisory material that was actually prepared for the Diamond Jubilee celebrations in June 2012 will be updated.
Yes, I got that. Yeah.
Anyone interested in arranging a party next year will be signposted to this guidance, and the guidance will provide information on applying for a road closure, temporary event notices, food safety, and will be available on our website. Monmouthshire's Event Safety Advisory Group are discussing this approach with other groups within the Gwent region to ensure a consistent and fair approach to all, and wherever possible such events will be encouraged, noting their positive impact on bringing local communities together. So what I can promise, Councillor Eason, is that this revised guidance will be produced and publicised in the coming months, certainly prior to this Christmas. But thank you very much for the question.
Can I come back with a cautionary question then, Chair? You just mentioned Sunday the 5th of June. There may be lots of parties, there may be very few. It's up to the individuals, and I've been asked these questions by my constituents. But what I see as might be a potential problem if quite a number of people in quite a number of streets want to hold a party on the 5th of June. It's going to cause potential problems for access to those streets if they're all around the same area. Would it be more advisable to have maybe two, a Saturday or a Sunday, that sort of thing, whereby events can be kept apart so that two streets don't conflict with each other? I think it's important that our residents get to know that early in the year so they can work together maybe to get around these problems. Thank you.
Yeah. No, can I come back, Chair?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, no, please.
No, I mean, you raise a very important point, and I'm sure that the logistics of this will be something that will have to be, you know, discussed on that on the website, and clearly local communities will need to liaise with each other to make sure that people can still get to their homes, and that emergency vehicles and etc. can still have access when required.
Okay, thank you. I know it raises by email, but I'm glad you've got it now on the public forum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And then the final piece of business today is at 8 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of July 2021. They've been circulated in the pack. Does anyone have any comments on those? If not, I'll sign them after the meeting. And with that, I'd like to thank all officers and guests for their reports, all members for their motions and also for their questions, and thank everyone for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.
Thank you, Chairman. Well done, sir.
You all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.